Rhino. 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 Rhino.
Hello, humans. Welcome to episode 61 of your Power Report. I'm here with C's. I'm Dan. It's good to be with y'all. You've got a lot of good. This is honestly the more interesting time to cover politics, like politics itself, because this is when most people are paying attention to it. There's still a lot of people, and this is a midterm election, so a lot of people are going to be like, wait, what? We're having an election? But there are actually elections. We'll get to talk about them very shortly. And I'm going to give you all my predictions for how I think these are going to turn out. Won't we be excited for that? So, C's, how would you like to start with a little bit of a history? Want to school the audience with a little bit of a history lesson?
Sure. What is the history topic of today?
I'm surprising C, so that's why you heard the little sigh in his voice, like, oh God, what sick sort of.
I didn't see this on a rundown. What's the history topic about?
It's okay. This is gonna be very quick.
Okay.
This is gonna be about back when politics made a little bit more sense. All right, are you ready? All right. Let me make sure the screen's sharing for you, sir.
All right.
And now let's watch this moment in political history.
Millen, would you like 30 seconds more?
Allow me to introduce myself. I represent the rent is too damn high party. People are working 8 hours a day and 40 hours a week in some a third job. Women can't afford to take care of their children, feed their children breakfast, lunch, and dinner. My main job is to provide a roof over your head, food on the table, and money in your pocket. This is politics as usual. Playing a silly game. It's not going to happen. The rent too damn high movement, the people I'm here to represent can't afford to pay their rent. They're being laid off right now as I speak. They can't eat breakfast, lunch, or dinner. Listen, someone's stomach, child's stomach just growled. Did you hear it? You gotta listen like me.
Okay,
let's
Mr.
talk
McMillan.
about the issue.
Mr.
People can't afford to pay their
Cuomo,
rent.
30 seconds for you, sir.
Rent is too damn high.
I love at the very end on the cut mic. Rent is too damn high.
I love the fact that they're like, all right, and the son of Governor Cuomo, future Governor Cuomo over here. The political dynastism is real here, but
I really like that party name. I can kind of get behind the rent is too damn high party. That kind of really slaps.
do you remember that when that came out originally?
I thought, honestly, when it did come out, I thought it was a meme. Like, I remember thinking it was like kind of like a meme. I thought like someone did one of those like Chappelle skit edits, and I was like, oh, this is great.
But like it kind of did turn out to be a meme, but it was definitely real. Like, it was definitely a real thing that happened. The rent is too damn high party rides again. I mean, well, that's actually not what's happening, but there was an interview that was done with Jimmy McMullen right here. Jimmy McMillan, sorry. Respect on his name. And they finally caught up with him, and they've learned that, he's had a little bit of a tricky, past 10 years. And, spoiler alert, he did not win the election for governor of New York. Andrew Cuomo did. And
stupid New York. Oh,
yeah.
Big fail.
And there's an article this week that was catching up with Jimmy McMillan, the rent is too damn high guy. And he's an interesting case because, yeah, we saw that rent is too damn high video. But when he's talking about it now, he says, I put my gloves on in the backseat of the car at Hofstra University, and I looked up at the heavens and said, this is my moment. I took out a comb and brushed my beard and said, let's get to work.
This, oh my God, there's literally never been a Democrat with that kind of swag in his voice in his entire life. And he really did a great job of painting the picture. I'm visualizing this man in New York with his gloves on in the cold, slapping the hood of his probably Geo Metro, and was just like,
did you hear the heartbeat? Did you hear that baby? Did you hear that baby? He did it because he's listening.
You know what? It's because you're not listening like me.
Gangster. But no, so apparently he had like a slew. Basically, there was nothing covered of him except in 2015 he was facing eviction. He decided to retire from politics. He's still fighting for hold his apartment. The owners of his building first moved to eject him from the $872 a month unit in 2011, arguing that he kept another place in Flatbush as his primary residence and allowed his son to stay in the East Village apartment. McMillan countered that his Flatbush address was the headquarters of the Rent is Too Damn High party, not his home, and secured a stay of eviction until 2015 that allowed him to remain in the unit. Right.
I mean, look, he's doing what any top level politician does, right? Like, oh, that's where the party headquarters is. I'm not mad at him for that. It's like, go off. But hey, he's just doing it on a low level. I mean, they didn't want him. They knew the Rent is Too Damn High the party was about to take off. So they had to cut the legs off early. And,
obviously.
I can't have that, man.
But McMillan then fell behind on rent a year later, court records show. He told City Limits that the owner, a limited liability company connected to a developer, would not give him a key in the effort to drive him out of the unit.
I like how the whole all the attack points on him are literally about his rent. They're like, not only is he part of the rent is too damn high party, we're gonna focus on rent being a primary issue in this man's life.
So actually, you can assume that McMillan isn't fond of the Democratic Party or Andrew Cuomo in general. In 2016,
no, definitely not a Cuomo fan.
But in 2016, he endorsed Donald Trump for president, saying the famous property owner who's charged with discriminating against non-white tenants and whose company has been accused of lying about apartment improvements to illegally inflate rents was the only candidate talking about veterans issues.
There's nothing in this world that's more backwards than literally a New Yorker writing for Donald Trump. A New Yorker? There's nobody on earth in America with more experience in history with Donald Trump than a New Yorker. They've known this man for a long time, and you're really writing for him? Come on now.
Oh,
I had the red shirt on to represent the Rent is Too Damn High party, and you gonna do this to me, man?
I had the thing with...
That'd be some great merch, by the way. Oh my God.
Well, yeah, to redo the Rent is Too Damn High party stuff. But in New York, you do have a lot of people who support Trump, but they're all rich. It's kind of the deal. That they're all wealthy. They all come from a certain class where, I'm not going to go Kanye here, but oftentimes they're real estate and property developers who are like, oh yeah, Donald Trump and Jared Kushner and all the associates who love fucking over people and property deals in New York. Those are my guys. Those are my people.
For sure.
So yeah, he's in a nursing home right now, at least from what I understand. This is just sort of like a story that was going into where he is right now, but I thought it was interesting just because, if nothing else, just to help me procrastinate while I get all of my tech set up. It also was an interesting moment to kind of highlight, hey, that was one of the earliest political memes I remember from 10 years ago. And
I swear, I remember it too, but I swear I thought it was just a straight meme. I didn't really like look into it. And honestly, I should have, dog. This man was really about that action.
Nah, the weirdest thing, I think, I have in the 6 degrees of separation way, I want to say that there's a rental car company in LA, like Sixt Rent-A-Car. You're on that rental car joint scene sometimes, right? You had a Sixt Rent-A-Car?
Yeah, I've heard of Six.
Yeah, they did a advertisement with the rent is too damn high guy. And I wonder if this is the video. No, they don't have it here, but he was actually in the ad, and I believe so was Jank of like TYT, actually.
Huh?
Of all people.
That's the most insane call to get. Hey, Jank, we really want to get you on Sixth Rental Car, which is also the hardest name to ever pronounce for any foreigner to try to go to a rental car company. Like, how do I say this word? Why is there no H at the end of this? Why is it Sixt? What is this, dude? What is this word?
I'm trying to think, but yeah, no, all the other words are very simple. Like, we haven't taken all the tech bubbly words like Uber or I guess Uber and Lyft are
or
ones,
dollar.
Like, dollar. God.
All those. If you're ever flying in or traveling and you see those budget deals, just really be careful with some of those 1-star cheaper kayak.com budget rentals and dollar rentals. It's just be careful. I'm not trying to flame them. Might become a future sponsor. I'm not flaming them, but just be careful.
Just
read the terms. Read the terms.
Look into it. Do your own research.
Yeah. Do your own research. Don't just accept your truth. Do your own research.
Okay. Dealer's choice. What stories do we want to cover? We could get into a little bit with the Liz Truss action. We could do, I don't know. I feel like another fun thing to start on is just like the whole, the workplace trends one that I sent.
Yeah.
That's a fun one.
Is there any do we really care about England that much? Come on, man.
It's just
really?
funny. It's just funny.
I know it is funny. Like the Liz Truss video I saw, that video that was like on Twitter of like everything she said and everything now was like one of the best like 1 week compilations of all time. It's like
oh no, like what? There's so many different metrics of this. There was, I believe someone said that Liz Truss was in office for approximately 20 Scaramucci's. Like
the best is her going hard on a campaign about tax breaks, and then her getting on the Senate floor and then she's like, "I'm sorry, I made a mistake."
I mean, she was really, to get into some substance of this, she was really set up to be a Thatcherite. Like, she was going to be like, I'm going to cut taxes. I'm going to give big business everything I can. I'm going to, just really mess things up and make things my own here. But thankfully,
she's like, I'm gonna make it real. I'm gonna give it some real Western vibes up in here, dog. We're gonna give it some real Western feels up in here.
Yeah. Yeah. To get, I think if there's a substantive thing I want to point at is that not enough people talking about what's going to happen after this. So, of course, we've seen all the news where Liz Truss, I'll put it here on the screen, is quitting. But yeah, that's the kind of the lead here is that UK is still in political and economic turmoil. For those who need like a quick primer on the UK system, I'll just explain it as I'm kind of going through here. Previously, you had Boris Johnson as the prime minister, and there were a bunch of scandals that honestly, by like American standards, are pretty light. By this, I mean like, really, he did a little bit of a Gavin Newsom and like a light Donald Trump, honestly. Like, he broke COVID protocols pretty flagrantly, and then he, lied a lot in his office. But like, politicians lying was something we were used to begin with. Donald Trump lied flagrantly and so often that, a lot of sane people were like, hey, wait a minute, hold on here. I want to kind of calm down and take it back a little bit. But it was too much for Boris Johnson. I guess the British press just wasn't having it. And so the Conservatives were like, okay, Boris Johnson voted no confidence. We're going to accept his resignation. And we're going to put our next Conservative leader in command, Liz Truss. Liz Truss has literally, it's sort of like the Veep situation where she just kind of like shows up, is not necessarily just is part of the ticket, and she comes in with a finance minister, Kwasi Kwarteng, and usually the way it goes is that if you have bad news to deliver as a party or as an entity or as a business, that's when you start to do diversity week. Like, it's actually a study. Like, companies will hire women CEOs or like CEOs of color right when they know the company's about to tank. So they can say, hey, look, we did it. And then they can get rid of that CEO and then hire one of the usuals, let's say. And there's actually a study that was done like this. I'm not saying this is what happened to Liz Truss, but it follows a very similar path. And so Liz Truss gets in, Kwasi Kwarteng, the African British finance minister, gets in, and they're like, tax cuts for the rich. We're going to fix the economy with tax cuts for the rich.
Real USA swag in that one. His mini budget proposal was, if you're rich, you were like, oh, this is hell yeah, dog. He was like, my mini budget, 65 billion in tax cuts for the riches only. It's like, what?
Yeah.
Wait a minute. In America, you know, I feel like that'd be, like you said, England's really kind of funny. Like, it's like everything that doesn't work, everything that works here doesn't really work there. And then also vice versa. So it was just kind of funny to see them like pull that. And then it's like, I just kept thinking to myself, like, damn, Liz Truss, like, you were just born in the wrong country, dog. You could have really got it cracking over here.
I mean, there's still a lot of this whole story reeks of American for sure.
Very.
There's one aspect that was making the rounds that we would be absolutely remiss to not point out. So Liz Truss, for old girl's 45-day tenure, this was something that Insider originally pointed out. She's going to be able to collect a yearly pension of £115,000, which currently is probably like dollar for dollar. So that's about $115,000 a year. But, you know, give it a couple of months at this way of the British economy, and that might be significantly less. But I love Joshua Potash's Twitter comment on here. Retire young using this one weird trick.
That was a great tweet. I was like, damn, we can all diss Liz Truss all we want, but she Euro stepped the hell out of this one, dude. She said, she said, retirement.
That's the Brexit step right there. She did her own Brexit.
Ooh, a Brexit step right
there. That's the fastest Brexit conservatives have ever done in England. 45
she's
days.
Dead ass. Like this should be every employee's goals. Like I gotta get on my Liz Truss grind, dog.
Yeah, screw quiet quitting. How do I skim this good?
How do I speed run retirement checks? How do I speed run retirement? That's clear.
Oh my God. Yeah, but so after the announcement of the tax cuts, the British economy is like, yo, we're in an inflationary period. Our dollar, our pound, our currency is weaker. Like, we can't afford to be doing this mess right now. Like, what's going on here? And so all the economic metrics turn out worse. The FTSE, the British, like one of the British stock exchanges, with terrible numbers. Gilts, which are like British bonds, essentially, the bond market, in shambles. Everyone, cue the "This is fine" meme where the dog is drinking the mug in the burning house. Cue Donald Glover and Community walking with the pizza boxes to the burning building. Like, this is now the British political economy. And, you know, conservatives are directly responsible for it. And so in the vote of no confidence, you had conservatives quoted as saying things like, I can't take it anymore. I can't handle this. I'm so fucking over it. Like, literally verbatim, so fucking over it. That's what they were saying. And so I was getting to what's going to happen after this. The conservatives are still in power. The regular election is the next general election in England is not until next year in 2023. I forget the exact month, but a snap election, which would be like a vote of no confidence in the party again, can't be called because currently conservatives have such a majority that wouldn't be possible. You need a simple majority to call the snap elections, so 50% plus one of all the voting members of parliament. And as long as the conservatives remain loyal to themselves, despite having not one but two prime ministers fall on the sword, so to speak, in the past, just as many months. two prime ministers in the past 2 months. Sit on that. Let that marinate. But
oh man, like
yeah,
makes me kind of miss BJ a little bit. It was a good time, and Liz never ran over a kid while playing football. She never threw a basketball backwards into a hoop. Fell into a lake. Liz just kind of came and speed run the retirement swag and 45 days in office. And yeah, it looks like a mess. Even when you watch some of their like parliament meetings, it's like crazy havoc. And I really don't know what the move is going to be, especially with like what the Labor Party is going to do and the versus the I don't know what they're going to do, honestly.
Oh, so I have more on the Labor Party and I have more on Lib Dems. But firstly, you should see Boris is back, baby.
Oh, God,
yeah,
damn,
baby.
hair is so swaggy.
Yeah,
Jeez.
baby. Trump wish he has that
Really?
prep school
My man has a
swagger.
mane.
But some of his allies, and of course, when you're getting into a lot of British press, as you will with a lot of political press, whoever is trying to get this message out, whoever will benefit from getting this message out, are the ones trying to do it. So, as CNN is reporting from London, Boris Johnson appears to be on the verge of attempting a stunning political comeback. Can I just say, appears to be on the verge of attempting.
I like that it's written so British too. A stunning political comeback.
He's trying to think about possibly owning everyone in the world. Like he's
attempting absolute debonair, stunning political comeback. Like it's not stunning, dude. It's not stunning at all, man. It's absolutely a shameful political comeback. That's what it should be called.
It should be hey y'all, hold this L please. We gotta they're just being ridiculous.
Oh my God.
Two sources who worked on Johnson's last campaign for the Conservative Party leadership in 2019 said he would run again this time. You know what? There's no shame in politics anymore, and anywhere in the English-speaking world, and a lot of other countries too. So you know what? Go ahead. Why not, bucko? Try it. See what happens. If British people are dumb enough to re-elect Boris Johnson and the Conservative government after this, they
deserve
everything that's coming of him. They've earned... They don't deserve it, because deserve is sort of like it's something that's sort of done unto them. No, this is earned, all right? They worked hard for this.
You're going to say Britain earned Boris Johnson based on their actions? I'm down.
No, not only that. If they had the opportunity to let go of Boris Johnson, if they have him back in, it's like, no, yeah, that entire continent, that entire little island there, is on a suicide mission.
If they want to keep destroying their little quid and their quids or whatever, then to keep it up, man. Bring Big BJ back and see how it pops off, and then when Boris comes in, he can be like, "This is all the fault of the socialists.
Yo,
they did this.
Boris Johnson,
not me."
Boris Johnson gets elected again. Scotland's gonna apply to be the 51st state.
Oh my God. Yeah, who we taking in? They're
gonna be straight screw this EU shit. We'll just volunteer.
Can we get Wales? Is Wales available? What's up with Wales, Doc?
Wales and Scotland, basically everything but England is remarkably Labour.
It's up for grabs.
Labour. And so let me get into Labour. Labour is up since the last election. Not 5 points. Not 7 points. Not 9 points. Not 19 points. They're up 30 points plus since the last election. But, as with the left anywhere in the world, they are very likely to snatch defeat from the jaws of victory. I can't say how. I'm just saying. Maybe, Caesar, you can agree with me on this a little bit. As someone who's been watching the Clippers for a while, I've seen a lot of opportunity be withered away in a moment's notice.
In the hands of Chris Paul. Yes, you're right. Yes. Yes, you're absolutely right. Yes.
Throw back that Supreme Dreams video where he's like, "The Suns!"
It literally is like that. And I think like being on that side too, it does feel a little bit clipperish, right? Where you're like, this is like great to be here. Then it gets to the point where it's important and then everything falls apart. You're like, this is why we suck.
It's literally like everyone who is just I mean, there are folks out there, and definitely talk out in the chat. I just want to shout out the chat really fast. Sup, Bam, good to see you. Hi, LG, great to see you as well over on YouTube. Good to see you, Adam, and Too Much to Type. Adam Rich says the NFL does that too. I think that's what I was getting to. There's a lot of different teams out there, and people who don't follow like elite teams or don't happen to live in a city where the elite teams are really eliting, so to speak. So screw all of Massachusetts, screw all of Los Angeles, has like some of the worst fans ever. But like most people are used to teams where they go long stretches of sucking, and when they have that chance of succeeding, you get really, really excited for it. And so that's kind of what Labor is like. You don't have Jeremy Corbyn right now. I think the leader of the Labor Party is right now someone who is really inept, like Keir Starmer. That's right. He's a British pop.
I don't know the leaders.
Yeah, I don't know that much about him, but from what I know, he's absolutely no. God damn it, I'm forgetting the former leader of the Labour Party who ran last time. Are you remembering his name? Jeremy Corbyn. Jeremy Corbyn. Duh. Oh. Thank you, Adam. Yes. It's been a long day / week. I was literally planning out how I'm going to do Power Report lives next year. I'm going to do that whole John Oliver thing where I just take a break every 6 weeks. But no. Jeremy Corbyn, thank you. Also, hi Letterhack. Also great work in your stream, tracing all those characters. I could not keep a conversation. I could barely keep a conversation while operating the stream, let alone doing all the artwork you're doing, tracing and going through your life and stuff. So definitely check out Letterhack streams if you can. But Sir Keir Starmer is with his Gordon Ramsay looking ass. Can we just on face alone? Can we just do a little bit of the?
This is a base stock build British man. This is you picture a British man that's one.
You open FIFA, make no changes.
Yeah, literally. They're like, oh, let's. I would like a general British male. They create this guy here, stock build right there.
So they have Keir Starmer, the NPC of the Labour Party, and he doesn't seem to be proving out to be that promising. And that's what you're getting everywhere. There is no deep bench on the left in the United States. There's no deep bench on the left in Canada. Germany's a little bit optimistic. We need to see a little bit more of how that government's working. But honestly, it being one of the stronger countries in the Eurozone, and we've seen what happens in the Eurozone. We have some countries who are doing well, some countries who are doing not well. And so monetary policy only goes so far when you share an economy across multiple countries with multiple different economic situations. So I don't even know how leftist Germany is going to be able to be. But we have a conservative government, and what that actually means is, hey, a lot of people were talking about the train strikes that are happening in the United States, which were modeled off of the rail strikes that were happening in England. And they're really successful at cutting off tube strikes and, the tube strikes are really successful at cutting off transportation, again, not in a way that was trying to be vindictive towards people, but in a way that was trying to prove that, listen, we as rail workers, we as tube workers, we who operate transport for London and all the little transportation systems within England are really important, and we need to have be paid fairly. We need to have time off. We need to be able to retire in ways that, we were told we would be and not face all these austerity cutting governments, which is interesting because it's looking like the conservative government is looking to make it harder for the rail workers to strike this time around. So let me get this article up here. Here it is from The Guardian. I think this is it. Yeah. Well, basically Network Rail and the union leaders are in talks to try to have this happen, but the conservative government is actually, I'm trying to find this article. I wish I need to prepare this better, but basically the conservative government is trying to stop their ability from striking. Because there's been, there we go. The government said the transport strikes bill, which will be presented to MPs on Thursday, aims to avoid disruption from staff walkouts. Prime Minister Liz Truss, former, smoking on that pack tonight, said UK transport users should not be held to ransom. So in reality, what's happening while you get all this political theater is what's happening with the workers. This is a great opportunity for the Labour Party to say, we stand with the transport workers, because in England, like, it's a little bit less of a car culture. A lot of people were able to get around using public transportation. We stand with all these people who help make our country run and work, and we want to make sure they are treated fairly. Okay, so this is particularly the rail union here. Future strikes are planned for the 3rd, 5th, and 7th of November, according to this article. But the Conservatives are literally trying to ban their ability to organize. Labour should be out there, like, calling this out and making sure the public is aware of this, because I think it's a little bit different British politics. I think if it's communicated to the public well enough, that people will actually start to respond and say, no, I stand with the rail strike workers. It's tough it makes it harder to do my commutes or whatever, but you know what, at the end of the day, these people are our friends, family, neighbors, and they need to be treated with dignity and respect in their work.
No, for sure. And also the ads on the right, incredible, for this article.
No, can I just say it's worse. They're not ads. These are actual articles in the BBC.
I mean, articles. Sorry, it's the ads for articles. It's incredible headlines. No, but I agree, and I have a few friends that live out in the UK and in England. I mean, in Britain, and they talk about how actually I think 2 of them I know don't even have a car. They literally just commute to and from work using tram and train, and it's a big part of it. I think that the communication is even, like, for example, in order to gain support for the strikes, I think it's even easier to communicate out there in the UK, because I think a lot of people resonate to day-to-day living. I mean, we saw how quickly things flipped against Boris Johnson. And the people, like, it was pretty unanimous how people, other than like Tories, how they felt about Boris Johnson. And it's really easy to communicate because a lot of people do subscribe to that day-to-day living. And that's why conservatives are trying to flip it into being like, oh, you can hold the people to ransom. It's like, yeah, man, but like also like the workers are also important too, because without the workers, the people couldn't even get on those trains in the first place. Like, it needs to be like a symbiotic relationship. So I think that I agree with you. They need to like jump on that and just set out that communication that we're not holding this up as conservatives are trying to derail what the Labor Party and the strikes is trying to get accomplished before, of course, the 3rd, the 5th, and the 7th of November.
Yeah, they're trying to derail it, but also we want the Labour Party to at least play a larger role in saying that, like, we stand with these workers and this is part of our politics, and this is something that, like, it's to tease a little bit of the conversation we'll have maybe in just a few moments about the Democratic Party and what's going on back home in the U.S. This is going to there needs to be counter messaging. I don't see a lot, even on the left, but even like liberals, I don't see a lot of actual counter messaging to say what they're talking about is bullshit. This is what we have to offer instead of just fear and lies and scaring you about your children.
Yeah.
I think that might be a good point to move into the election stuff. Want to do that?
Let's do it. Coming up.
How are you feeling? We are coming up on the midterm elections. Do you, not to ask you to reveal on stream, but are you, how you feel about voting in your own like local stuff? Let me tell you, I have not re-registered or had not re-registered at my like new address, so I had to do that really quickly. But California is one of those states where you just go to the Democratic Party and you just get your ballot pre-filled out, and then you take 3 because they have them available, like the Trader Joe's Fearless Flyer, and then you just drop them in your voting booth, and you can just illegally vote 20 times for the Democrats.
You're dropping the most hardcore California stuff right now ever, and you're exposing us. So stop, Dan. Thank you.
No. Yeah.
Locally, I there's like I think what I always try to tell people, especially like I worked majority of my life in Orange County, but I of course I live in Long Beach, and I vote here at my local neighborhood park. It's a lovely little walk. I walk over there, I feel all happy and I feel like a real American, smiling like, yes sir, expressing my freedoms. Our former, as Dan knows, our former mayor of Long Beach has since moved on, and
kind of
he's trying to have a seat in the Senate.
In my understanding, he's still mayor, but like he's running for Congress is like a thing where like if he wins, I don't know if it's assembly or whatever, but like if he wins, then obviously there'll be a special election for mayor. But if he loses, then he gets to wait out his term.
Yeah, basically
one foot in, one foot out.
They're kind of do what they do, like that pro tem thing, where like here's the mayor in waiting if you do pop off and get promoted. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, they kind of have that going on right now.
That's interesting. I'm not gonna get too much into like niche Long Beach politics, but like,
of course, yeah.
And like, LA politics, not even get too niche into that, even though that's made a lot of national headlines lately. But
yes, real wild.
Yeah, let me just say, don't vote for the ones who were caught on tape saying racist shit. That's maybe an easy one to do. Los Angeles.
All the ones that were on there, Donald Sterling, don't be on that one. That's just some very simple advice to give out.
Kevin De Leon, who refuses. Oh, Donald Sterling, great LA reference. That's great, honestly.
Yes.
Clippers full circle, baby.
Well, this is the Clippers election broadcast. I don't know if people knew this. This is a takeover.
Clippers report. You're in the red. I'm in the white.
Yeah, we're doing it today. I'm sorry. There's no purple and gold here today. No way.
I was on with JR earlier today, and I want to say he had a Clippers hat on too. So
I saw that picture. I was like, okay.
All day.
Look at us coming full force. Low key, is the Clippers the leftist basketball team of Los Angeles? Is that what I'm hearing here?
I mean, no, because their new stadium is going to be in gentrifying that Inglewood neighborhood, so probably not.
Okay, Dan, why did you just destroy it? God damn it, dude. Yes, it's going to destroy millions of area and homes and rent increases, and Inglewood is going to have 15 teams. Yes, yeah, whatever.
But it's not their fault. It's not as bad as playing in the SoFi Stadium.
Hey. It's billionaire funded though.
Hold on. I would rather have the Clippers play in was it the Honey Arena or whatever they're gonna call it, or like
is it? It's not gonna be called the Honey Arena.
No, the new Clippers are.
Is it gonna be called the Bumble Arena? I heard they're sponsored by Bumble now.
Yeah, they are, but I forget what it's gonna be called.
It'd be great if it was called.
The Intuit Dome, right? Some banking thing.
Of course.
Yeah. Anyways,
Intuit Dome.
I'd rather
whack.
Talk about slim pickings, but I'd rather it be the Intuit Dome than it be the Crypto.com arena.
Yeah, Crypto.com is arguably one of the most horrific of all time. And the fact that Crypto.com epically, rurally flushed out is just beautiful. The fat
crypto was everywhere, and then that was just this year's Super Bowl. That was this year's Super Bowl where crypto ads were everywhere. And that's when they announced the thing, and now for the next 30 years it's going to be like, oh, this is the Radio Shack Arena.
Circuit City Arena.
Right?
Yo, R.I.P. Fries. Come on, dog. Damn, R.I.P. Fries is R.I.P. forever.
Going to the Nextel Dome, bro.
Yeah, see. No, it's been... The names in L.A. have been rough since we had Staples. We have that, SoFi, which is a demon company. We have SoFi, Crypto.com, and now we got a bank. So we just got all the goodies and the names in L.A.
Anyways. Polls. We'll be going to my good friend, good friend of the show, Nate Silver, 538, his website, because it's a good aggregate of all the polls. So Currently, Democrats are slightly favored to run the Senate, and Republicans are favored to run the House. I said that I would give you my prediction on the 2022 election. I think the Republicans are going to win the House, which is what 538 is saying. I think the Republicans are going to win the Senate.
Wow, you think it's going to be a sweep?
Yes.
Damn.
This, I could be wrong. But, and I also keep in mind these numbers because a lot of people get confused by these numbers. Some people might think that, oh, Democrats are expected to get 59 seats in the House, Republicans expect to get 41. If that were within the realm of possibility, I would not be making as bold of a prediction as I am now. This is that situation like in 2016 where everyone was saying, oh, Hillary Clinton has a 95% chance of winning, or Hillary Clinton has a 75% chance of winning going into the election day, I think was the no, it was 65% chance, something like that. 75, 65. That means, okay, in 65 or 75 out of 100 chances, Hillary Clinton wins. In those other chances, Donald Trump wins. And so if you're picking out of like a lottery roller wheel or whatever the hell is that ball thing, and you're trying to pick balls out of that lottery ball picker, and you know 95% of them are regular, like pool balls, like for billiards or whatever, and 5% of them are anthrax. It's a little bit rough. You're definitely playing Russian roulette, but
it's true.
Listen, 95 out of 100, I'd do it for fun. 75 out of 100, I'm not playing that game. All right? So before you make your point, Caesar, let me bring the analogy back. 41 times out of 100, Republicans win. 41 cyanide balls versus 59 billiards balls. Do you really want to play that game?
Those aren't good odds.
I'm not liking the odds.
No. Damn, that house, this house odds are nuts. 79 and 100? God.
So
that's a big number.
Traditionally, if the party of the executive branch manages to get the House in an election year, which often happens because people vote down the ticket, and so people who vote for the Democrat or Republican and president vote for that person in the party down the ticket usually. So they get a boost from that. Usually 2 years happens, and the American honeymoon period for politicians is like shrinking every single time. It's probably days at this point, if not weeks. And so usually there's a backlash, and the party that is in power in the executive branch usually loses control. And so that's a historical thing going against the Democrats. Number two, you had redistricting based off of the 2020 census that Donald Trump fought tooth and nail to fuck up and screw up the counts. In a lot of states overall with redistricting, I did a little bit of research on this, not a lot of things changed. And even in some states like California, things lean a little bit in favor of Democrats, Democrats gaining a seat here or there in the House or whatever. But ultimately, Democrats are losing seats that they would generally have in the House with the new districting drawing, and they're less favored to win in a situation like this where they had just won the presidency in 2020. So the House was kind of just doomed from the start. The Senate was kind of a teetering thing to begin with. Remember, we had those special elections in Georgia back when Joe Biden promised the $2,000 checks that never happened, before Republican Party tried out Dr. Seuss and cancel culture and targeting trans people as their political strategy that they are currently riding on to victory, as I say right now. Back when all that was happening, that was to fight to get the utterly feckless and useless 51 to 50 sort of like tiebreaker Senate that we have right now. So that we barely got that. Now it's looking like we're going to lose it. And that's at least my prediction. I can go into some details here, but as you're doing that, C's, what do you think?
Damn, I mean, morbid is how I feel. Not Morbius, but definitely morbid about it. I don't know about something about, I don't know about the House. I mean, I don't know about the Senate. I think that I can I can unfortunately see the House switching, but something I don't know. I feel like the Senate one's gonna be super close. Just because like you also have Biden like really pushing forward as well too. And I feel like it's gonna be like a little dicey, especially in some of those like especially like obviously we're all following the big ones like the Georgia, what's going on there, and some of those states. So it's feeling a little dicey. I just really feel like I feel like there's still so much that can change in the next couple days, and I don't know about a sweep like you, or a red sweep basically, but I can definitely see the Republicans grabbing the House, unfortunately. But I think the Senate, I think the Democrats can pull it off. I think it's going to be
So
slim though, and I don't think we're going to get enough seats that we really need though in the end.
Here's why I think there are some surprises. All right, so
Mm.
on this map, the easiest way I can describe it is if you have a long box
Yeah.
like this up here, that means the seat is up for election. And if it's gray
Okay.
like this, that means it's more likely to be a toss-up. So I'm going to be focusing on those states, which are Pennsylvania and Georgia and Nevada.
Oh yeah, Nevada. I forgot about
Yeah.
them.
So in Nevada, it's a little bit of a toss-up, and really, I'd be lying to you if I told you that I had strong opinions about how I believe that one's going to go. I super don't.
I haven't heard any conversations about Nevada really.
It's always interesting because Nevada, it's a very important state electorally, I think, for both Democrats and Republicans. But I think just because of the sparse population, it's really just a lot of folks around Henderson, Las Vegas, Reno, and then it's really sparsely populated otherwise. I think it's just not really thought of on the board. And you're talking about, of course, this is the Senate here, but especially as far as House, how much weight they have in the House, definitely one of the milder states there. But here's my hot take for Georgia. I think Georgia could stay blue. The reason why I say that is because here's some post-truth is the wrong word, but here's some truths I think that are outside of the mainstream media that are kind of informing my gut a little bit. Number one is that the polls undersell Republican victories. I think they have been since 2016. I think the extent to which they've been underselling them has been a little bit mixed, especially in 2018 when you had some Democratic midterm success. But that was, again, 2018 midterm success after 2016 midterm failure, or 2016 election failure on the part of the Democrats. So that's a historical trend that's usually to be expected. Just like Biden's expected to lose his house after his election, Trump lost his house after his. This is just a normal thing.
Yeah.
Georgia, why I think it could go blue. That's the Herschel Walker versus Raphael Warnock debate. That's that battle. Early voting is as high as it was in 2020, the first couple days of early voting.
Yeah, they're getting crazy numbers.
Yeah, the other fact about politics now, especially after 2020, early voting favors Democrats. Republicans don't believe in early voting. They believe voting itself is a lie. They believe the only way you go down to a polling place is with your voter ID, which is your NRA membership, your gun, which is also your NRA membership, and by threatening some elderly black people on the way. That's how they...
Yes, and your USA hat.
That's how they believe in voting. And taking your sweet-ass time so the working class people behind you who are late for their jobs could face the fear of losing them. That's the way Republicans vote, all right? So you will see the Republican wave come in on Election Day, but if you're seeing really high turnout for votes right now, this early on in early voting, and at least I saw the first 2 days were higher than in 2020, that's a good sign.
That's a great point.
Yeah,
that's a great point.
The other thing I'm going to say, and I'll also let you jump in here, is Stacey Abrams putting in work. Like, I have a lot of stuff to talk about her. I think she's a neolib, but when it comes to registering people to vote in Georgia, she's been running a clinic along with a bunch of other places. And if that can possibly pay dividends here, I think it'll be in Georgia. I don't think they'll be as lucky in Pennsylvania, but before I go into that, I want to get some of your thoughts.
No, for sure. I mean, I've been following the Georgia one closely as well too. I watched that debate. There was a hooting time with the the fake police badges. That was a great time to watch. Also an
Sorry.
embarrassment to my brain
Sorry.
cells and human beings in general. Sergeant Walker. Yeah, Sergeant Walker, Texas Ranger. He really showed up today with his Big Lots police badge. The thing
From
to me
Party
is that-
City.
that-
Fucking
that-
Spirit
didn't
Halloween
really think
police
about what
badge.
that-
I'm sorry, continue.
Yeah, he was like, I got my costume early. And then the best is when he showed the video with that sheriff. That was just, chef's kiss. But I think that, of course, like, we're not, Walker also has conservative people turning kind of against him as well, too, within his own party. Granted, I know his son is a meme and a troll online and just annoying in general, but that is someone within the circle of sorts. So that's kind of causing that causes whenever you have extra rift or any kind of like drama like that, it gets iffy. And everybody saw the interview with the abortion papers and stuff and the checks he signed. It feels a little dicey, and I think for even like when you said, I think your point was great. When you see early results, especially in a place like Georgia, that's huge for the Democratic Party because the Democrats really are all about the mail-in ballots and really trying to get things done early. They're much more efficient with their time in a positive way rather than Republican voters who are efficient to shut down the voting times, honestly. The Pennsylvania one, I'm like more nervous about. Honestly, I
That's
wish
the Fetterman
I was
Dr. Oz
following
race.
that more.
Just to clarify.
Yeah, the Dr. Oz, which is, I still think it's insane but I just feel that campaign run that Dr. Oz is running in Pennsylvania is like disgusting. It's like so disgusting to like say these things about is his name John? I forgot.
John
I can't pronounce
Fetterman,
his
yes.
last name. Fetterman, yeah. Yeah, that's a scary and intense one because the difference between Herschel Walker and of course Dr. Oz, both demons. Dr. Oz still has much more of a positive current impacted light within people. Like he's still much more like positively seen, especially in those circles. Especially when he got that Oprah boosty early in his life. So the Pennsylvania one I'm more nervous about, but the Georgia one I really think I can agree with you based on what's going to happen with that one.
Pennsylvania is a little bit more of a gut check, and it's also some news I've been seeing out recently. Like, listen, I think Bernie Sanders also sounded the alarm. He did a really long address that I was going to take some clips from, but I've just been so busy.
Yeah.
That was just like, listen, the Democratic Party right now does not have a cohesive message about the economy. And this is no different. Before the Supreme Court took down abortion access on a federal level earlier this year, this was kind of the message. It's like, okay, this midterm is going to be looking kind of rough. Maybe there'll be some things Biden was talking about, but this is before student debt cancellation was a thing. So we were like, listen, Biden, I remember this because people were getting kind of annoyed with me. I was like, Biden is a self-fulfilling prophecy, at least from my opinion, because he's not doing enough to excite Democratic voters to vote for him. There's no Trump anymore, so he's going to need to actually motivate people to do something. And being motivated by Republican malice is only going to take you so far, because I fully respect, and especially I'm talking about all the time, that this is the most consequential midterm election in American history for women's rights and for gay rights, LGBTQ plus rights. More on that in a moment.
Huge.
But ultimately, that's not going to matter to a lot of women and a lot of queer people and a lot of men who are voting if the economy's bad. And like, when I saw in 2021, people putting stickers on gas station pumps with Joe Biden pointing to this little price saying, I did that. I was like, listen, man, Republicans are just great at messaging. Because we can say as many times as possible that presidents have little to nothing to do with gas prices. We can say there's all this other stuff that's going on, but at the end of the day, people see prices going up for everything, whether it's just frivolous goods like cars or just regular staples like food, water, gas, energy, etc. Credit card debt. People are piling into their savings and credit card debt just to make ends meet. And by the way, interest rates are rising, so it costs more to spend on those credit cards. So people are having a harder time paying back those things. People are having a harder time working through emergencies. And yeah, all the culture war crap that Republicans are putting through the world is sick and gross. But for the abortion stuff that they're talking about and the trans rights stuff they're talking about, they're also running the crime war. They're also running, they're coming for your kids. They're running a game of fear, which is just laying the groundwork for what they're going to do in 2024, all the scary stuff we've been talking about. And I think Pennsylvania is going to be ground zero for where that strategy is going to work. I have not fully sat down with the idea of Dr. Oz, Dr. Mehmet Oz, the TV doctor guy who's not totally a worthy doctor, is actually going to have political power in one of the most consequential states in the nation. But that's my prediction. I hope I'm wrong.
No, and let real quick to end it, wrap that part up of my side. Like I think that especially when it comes to Biden, probably what can we say? And we both actually discussed on the show how we've seen the Biden how he's been in office since we've come. We've talked about it on the show. I think only two things that can really shine some positive light on is, of course, the debt cancellation that he initiated with the student loan forgiveness plan. And I mean, sort of, because I mean, this isn't really positive because he didn't do it, but that message he said about like codifying Roe v. Wade, if he gets the 2 Senate seats, like that's positive towards Democratic voters. But he didn't address things that I think would really spark like energy and ambition for Democratic people to vote, which is of course addressing positively, like really addressing the gas situation, the economy. Like he's been flip-floppy with his communication on how the gas prices are, even kind of gaslighting us a little bit about it. And also he's been kind of like and of course he's been kind of weird too, talking about the pandemic and COVID. So if you're really trying to get people to get in there and vote, you need to be doing it better. That's why I do want to commend people like Stacey Abrams, especially in their states, really rallying people, telling them that, hey, this is a swing. Our state is extremely vital to the future of the country, so we need to get in there. But I think that Biden's done two things, but I wouldn't say that it's like, oh, he's been doing an Abe job. I would say like barely passing in terms of what he needs to be doing to stifle and push. But to push Democrats to get in there and vote and make a difference, because the way the Republican and conservative party is able to run off of fear mongering and just horrible messaging, literally since last year, with trans rights and the future of millions of Americans, it would be so much. It's honestly, they're like literally lobbing easy dunks for the Democratic Party to take advantage of and rally people to be like, come on now, is this really what you want? Because even with a lot of conservative people you talk to, which is funny, when I recently did a trip to Idaho, I had some conversations with people up there. We all know how it goes down over there. It's really interesting that there's some people that I know that are literally like very conservative, but that the abortion conversation is like it's an uncomfortable answer for them. When people are uncomfortable standing on a point like that, then it's like, that's someone that you're like, this is something they may be a Republican voter, but this would be something they would switch upon, and that would be a Democratic vote just for this, midterm, or for this season, because they don't want this to change in their lives, because a lot of these things affect them directly every day. These are every day. This is like abortions is like bipartisan for anybody. It affects anybody in America, no matter what you believe. And you can end up in a situation where this is something where you need to take care of. So I just don't feel like Democratic Party's done a great job of communicating the necessity for that and addressing this. And I really think that that's going to bite us in the ass when it comes to the House, and hopefully not in the Senate.
I couldn't agree with you more. With that, like, I think Joe Biden has done a better job than I would have expected here. Like, listen,
Good. Me too. That's a good point. Yeah.
I was really cynical on student debt relief. I was thinking he would have had to do something, but listen, the $20K, the additional $10K for Pell Grant recipients was not something that I originally saw coming, and I think that's great. I think the form, like, congratulations, the government did a form. It was easy. It was simple, and people are
Like 8 questions. You're good.
people
to
are
go?
gonna start seeing that debt removed from their accounts by the end of this year. It's phenomenal policy, and I think that is genuinely exciting young voters for Joe Biden a little bit, and I think that's going to be important here. I think you need to connect that messaging to voters, like people like Fetterman, people like, I mean,
Yeah.
know your audience. But I think especially Fetterman should say, listen, I'm the party that is for economic justice for the working class. I'm the party that wants to go even further than student debt relief and actually reform college and higher education overall. People like Mehmet Oz would go backwards with these things. So, please vote against that. I mean, I hope so. But this is... The last thing I'll say is to the people you saw in Idaho. I'll read some comments. That'll be the last thing I say. But the last thing I will say is that for the people in Idaho, I think a lot of people are just people broadly speaking who are not necessarily political, but obviously pay attention to these things when it comes time to it, can be more easily swayed than we think. Right? Like,
No, you're absolutely, like, literally,
Yeah.
you're right. Like, seriously.
they like, we're online all the time and people have egos, and like our politics has become so fragmented that like people don't want to show any kind of vulnerability to changing their opinions because they feel like, oh, you're giving in to the weak libtards, or oh, you must be bigoted, or like there's a lot of stakes for admitting you're misinformed or admitting that your opinions might like lie in another place, right? Especially if you're on the right. But there are moments like disaster relief where DeSantis and Biden are working hand in hand because that's just what you have to do as a government bare minimum, or things like abortion that I think are just too hard for people to ignore in their daily lives to be able to just like say nothing about it. Now, I still feel that it also works the other way where, again, like, it's the economy, stupid. If people are just feeling like, yo, it sucks and I'm struggling like making ends meet and I'm going to blame who's in power because that's just how it be. I just feel like that is most of the time how these votes come down to, because even though we're trying very hard, people don't pay attention to shows like this throughout all the 2 years to get like all the context to vote and make these strong decisions. Maybe 20 million people vote, and on the average night, on a good night, 1.5 million people watch Fox News, and they're number one, right? So we're getting more of this information out there, but I think it's gonna come down to the economy.
Yeah, and no, for sure. And to wrap that up, it's like, think about it, how simple it is, where people can be like, yeah, I'm conservative. I enjoy these, tax breaks, and I enjoy I don't want too much. I don't like some of the Democratic and these. I don't want any socialist ideas to come into the government that I want. So I don't know, Biden. I'm not into that. But then when you start telling people, hey, like, things that are literally a right that you get no matter who you are being taken away. Like, even if you're not even like. Not even if you're just as traditional Christian or you're traditional, just a conservative, you're like, oh, wait a minute. Like, not that I would get an abortion, but you're taking away the option for me. That's how those people you can talk to and just levy them into being like, see, like, this is like literally something that's taking away your option. And I think in life, you should have maximum options. Okay, you should have all the options you want. That's part of freedom. Am I wrong? When they take this away, that's taking away a freedom. You scream about the amendments. That's a freedom, my friend. And if you want that taken away, you go ahead and make that decision in however many days, 10 days, 7 days, wherever what state you're in. So I think that I don't think we unfortunately have enough of those people within the Democratic Party that are able to talk, and especially people that are in those red states that talk that way, to people. And when you do, I think you see positive results, such as in Georgia, you see switches, but we need more of that because it's going to keep being consistently this flip flop back and forth, and and hopefully not basically a red sweep of both the House and the Senate.
Yeah. Reading in chat, El Gary says, "Go C's." Yeah, C's making fire points tonight. And then kind of going on to what you're saying, Letteract says, absolutely blows my mind that anyone not a faith and flag conservative would vote Republican. This is not the time to vote against Dems because they aren't good enough when the GOP is literally out to get us. And yeah, hopefully that is the point I'm making, and I feel like that is. I mean, like, Dan from the internet just said that Joe Biden is doing an okay job, all right? Like,
yeah. Democrats watch the show and they go, this goddamn Dan from the internet dude, he just doesn't levy up on my boy Big Biden.
Yeah, like, and that's literally no one is watching the show at this point. But like, that should be the point in saying, like, listen, Joe Biden's not on the ballot, and once we get out of the midterm elections here, best believe in 2023 on Power Report, we're gonna start talking about all right, is Biden gonna run again? Who are the likely Democratic frontrunners? And it's gonna be a very depressing conversation. I'm gonna tell you that right now. But
no,
like,
let's get through this first initial depression, then we'll get to the next depression.
Yeah, to get to your point though, Letterhack, like, when you get down to a local level, I really believe, like, check locally. A lot of times, especially in California or New York or, you know, solidly blue places in Portland and Los Angeles and San Francisco, you'll often have Democrats running against other Democrats. And that's the opportunity where I'm like, hey, yo, like, let's see, can we flex and possibly get someone who more aligns with the progressive ideology or a progressive ideology, whether that is just, you know, a standard progressive or a socialist even. Like, let's see if we can move some of that in some of these cities there. But yeah, in these Senate races that we're talking about that are heavily contested, where it's one Democrat versus one Republican and the winner gets control of the Senate and every Senate seat counts. No, this is not the time to, you know, protest vote or withhold your votes for any protest reasons. This is very serious. And I wouldn't even do that sort of thing for governor either, because we are at a time in the 2024 elections as well, and as I'm going to cover a little bit later, probably sees when you'll be off, but Republicans are coming for not only LGBTQ plus rights and trans rights, not only the rights of people with disabilities, people who want to seek and get abortions. They're coming after the vote. Once they have the vote, they can take any right they want. They can expand rights for certain groups of people and cut them down for other groups of people, and they won't say they're doing as much, but that's effectively what the result will be. And there will be nothing to stop them, because I'm just going to keep saying it until it's as clear as possible. The Republican Party's stance on elections is the elections the Republicans win are legitimate, and the elections the Democrats win were probably full of fraud, and we should investigate them and slow down the courts with these fraudulent investigations that at bare minimum, like, go nowhere but muddy the waters and get people to start to distrust the system automatically, but at bare maximum actually get elections overturned or actually tip the scales towards more Republicans, like what happened in 2000 with the Supreme Court deciding that George Bush was president. Like you got with all these situations where they almost overturned the election results here, but for one Republican with a conscience in Arizona, but for two Republicans with a conscience in Michigan. We were hanging by a thread in 2020, we're hanging by a thread in 2020, rather, the actual year 2020. And in 2022, more people coming for the vote are going to be successful. And so it's really not the time for protest votes unless it's like, okay, city council person, we've got a liberal versus a socialist, and there's no Republicans not going to win the seat, so okay, this is good. Like, those are your chances to do things, which is what I've always been saying as a political thing. Like, you have a lot of opportunity at the local level, especially if you're in a blue leaning city, to make progressive things happen, and that could become a model for your state or the country overall. But at this point, we got to do a lot of defensive voting, and that even includes me, even in California. So
yeah, Dan.
Yeah.
Register your new address, fool. Get that defensive voting up, man.
Yeah, I am registered. Again, thankfully it's California, where not only can I vote day of and register day of, I could essentially register after and vote after and still probably get my vote counted.
California, you can get real silly.
California, you can... I will say, It is a little too easy to vote in California. Like
California's like, it's gonna be blue. What the hell are you talking about, dog? Just come tomorrow, Dan. It's okay.
Don't worry about it. It is a little too chill. Like, we'll mail you your.
Yeah, one day we're gonna be on here. It's gonna be bad news, but for now, it's like, dude, we're gonna win, dude. It's like we're up by 9 million votes. Just come tomorrow, dog. It's all good. Don't worry about it, buddy. Come on around 8:30 a.m.
We got that thing from The Simpsons where, like, no matter what button you press, it's still our votes. Like, we got that on lock, buddy.
Yeah, you press the red button in California, it's blues. Like, what?
One of my favorite California tricks, meanwhile, just before we get into the next story, which will be the Maddow, Jon Stewart trans stuff, but, like, the fact that you can just... What was I trying to say? Like, one of the funniest things is the fact that you can just show up to a place and literally not be registered and just be like, oh, I just moved here. I'm just going to write down my address. And you do a provisional ballot. And they go like, yeah, we're just going to check and just give us 3 weeks and we'll either throw your ballot out or we'll like actually count it. And that's why they're always like, California is like the last state to come in. And it's going to be blue most likely, but they can't officially certify the votes until like December because of California.
Hey man, this is Hollywood, baby. You know what I mean? It's Hollywood, baby. We're working on LA time. It's
We're making movies
we're
here.
Figuring it out. Don't worry.
As I say in my New Yorker accent. I'm walking here in California.
What are you talking about, huh? What are you talking about? It's blue anyways, huh?
Good Lord.
Never been in New York in my life.
you should consider it, old travel boy sees.
Yeah, add it to the vlog list, you know?
But, so, Rachel Maddow sort of is transitioning on MSNBC, and, you know, she's not dying. She's not even going anywhere. She is going from doing, like, a Monday to Friday show, then she started doing a Monday to Thursday show. Now her show's only on Mondays on MSNBC, and she does a podcast, and she's going back to classic old school Rachel Maddow. I'm going to talk your head off for 45 minutes, but it's going to be captivating attention wise because it's going to be, you know, like into deep historical things that get missed by the news cycle. That was the original appeal to Rachel Maddow before it was like listen, you just got to be a cable news anchor during the Trump administration and do whatever Russia, Trump conspiracy stuff is coming across the wires today, right? So ultimately, that led that whole like Rachel Maddow's coverage in during the Obama administration that was a little bit too favorable towards the Democratic president and during the Trump administration, which missed a lot of substance, really made it so not only did MSNBC lose a lot of its or almost all of its cachet with the real left, but they missed out on an opportunity to have the largest like cable news platform that is like abashedly liberal and to use that to stem some of the propaganda that you're getting on the right wing, whether it's about crime or Black Lives Matter or trans people or whoever's coming or not coming after your children. Like, these are things that A, have happened in history already, and B, really smart people like Rachel Maddow are noticing they're happening again and noticing that they kind of dropped the ball in acting in the moment to maybe do what they could to stop it. So to kind of set off this conversation and set off some other conversations we had from some other early 2000s media throwbacks, I'm going to play this clip from Rachel Maddow talking on Alex Wagner's show. Alex Wagner is now replacing Rachel Maddow's time slot most of the time. But Rachel Maddow is essentially going to conclude what she's talking about in one of her newer podcasts, which is a lot about how messages spread and how politicians are able to use fear, specifically in the United States, to make their points.
If somebody is showing up in your town and they're trying to tell you to hate Jews, hate immigrants, hate black people, hate whoever it is, turn people against one another, there's some other that we all need to be allied against. They know it's going to be controversial. They're hoping it will upset you. They want the publicity. They might even want violence in terms of confrontations between their supporters, their thugs, and those of you who are outraged. That's what makes them feel big and important, gives them more juice, gives them more fundraising opportunities, and moves them on to the next town. Don't do that. Don't publicize them. Instead, inoculate your community against these ideas. Tell them what they're going to hear before they hear them. Tell them how these are old ideas and this is how they've worked out in other places. Use education to make this stuff seem boring and old news and not salacious and modern. And I feel like it's a media criticism column from the 2016 election.
We're
right?
doing it all wrong.
Well, it's just, when somebody's trying to make you outraged, that means that your outrage is you playing their request.
Right.
You know what I mean? Don't let people yank your chain. Control the narrative yourself. If somebody is trying to take over the news cycle by being outrageous, do not take the bait. Instead, describe what they are doing rather than allowing them to do it through you. That's what I think the message was then, and I wish we'd been better at it these last 5 years.
That was a fascinating clip from Rachel Maddow, because pundits never admit when they're wrong. And they rarely even do it like in the past. They never do the whole like, in retrospect, I should have done this wrong thing here. But I'm curious what you thought, Cease.
Yeah, basically Rachel said, don't get your chain snatched. So I can always respect that messaging. No, but that's the truth though. I think that you often hear people in these positions discuss, like, literally talk about points and advocate for things in very hypocritical, because they may go against what they said before or they didn't adhere to before. But it's really rare, like you said, to hear them actually like go back and like correct and admit wrongs and be like, hey, this is what I did wrong before, but like this is what I'm trying to put out now to the future. You really hear that. It becomes like a circle of like they always like to like this. They like to bleed like this perfectionism. And I think that also steers a lot of people away from politics as well too. It feels very like nasty in that way, and I think you very rarely hear like accountability. Accountability is not something you commonly hear within the circles at all.
Yeah, and because that accountability is like to yourself. Rachel Maddow was the highest paid person in MSNBC, like minimum $10 million a year from that job, and it only went up because that like primetime cable news host is like, it's the spot.
Those, you know, with the ad revenue, it's nuts.
Yeah, TV cable news ad revenue, it's tremendous. But again, like the ads there dictate a lot of what you can say. And even someone like Rachel Maddow, who I wouldn't say single-handedly, but was definitely a major part in cementing MSNBC as a leftist media outlet, or like a liberal media outlet. Let's say liberal, not leftist, liberal.
Yeah, liberal.
Because back in the 2000s, like you had Keith Olbermann holding it down, but other than that, there was Chris Matthews, who was a moderate, Joe Scarborough, who is a moderate, Andrea Mitchell, who was very moderate, liberal leaning at the time, but like very moderate, and then Chuck Todd, who barely has a brain. So like it's now you have folks like Chris Hayes, Alex Wagner, Crystal Ball used to be an MSNBC host, and now she is a questionably left pundit. Crystal Ball used to have a show with Alex Wagner and Teray. All right, like this. They've certainly gone through a lot of different cycles, no pun intended, but yeah, you don't get a lot of, especially in these places where the cash is rolling in. Even when you're losing, you're winning compared to the news space, because this is news is not profitable. But when you're part of a company like NBC Universal Comcast, which NBC Universal or MSNBC is part of, it doesn't matter because you're just like a rounding error. You're one small loss. And like, hey, when kids go to Universal Studios and watch the Minions movie, that offsets all the losses from MSNBC. So it's like, it's okay. It's straight. Like, we got theme parks that cover this part of the company. All right. So
yeah, they're like a dot in like the whole company.
Absolutely. And so there's a lot of incentive to correct yourself when you're wrong. So I'm glad Rachel Maddow did this. But when this comes into play and when this becomes reality is around the culture war issue she was talking about. Like, what she was just saying in there just now was saying that when you have conservatives or when you have Republicans, just people in the media who are trying to get a rise out of you, don't let them. That's ultimately the message that Rachel Maddow is trying to portray here. But and she's also trying to say that, like, we need to have counter programming to these people. Like, one example is when she says, reach to your community first by saying, hey, this message is about to come. These people are going to say this. Here's how we inoculate your audience, is what I think she said, inoculate your community so that they're prepared for this kind of thing. Also, shout out Left in the Box. Good evening. Thank you for joining us today. But by that it means on Power Report, which I'm very proud of us doing the show season, I'm very proud of what we did. February 2021. You can go back to those episodes. First thing we were talking about was that Dr. Seuss and this Republican fake book banning. That's why I keep bringing it up so people remember.
Oh yeah.
This is the Republicans speeding up their culture war thing. And they're just, beta testing it on Dr. Seuss books and Sesame Street and these little preschool things. But they always mention that kids are in danger. They always mention grooming. They always mention predators. And they always insert whoever is their political opponent anyways in tune of that. Because it's weird. It's what their voters who are conservative are not used to. And so they're like, hey, look at those trans people who make you confused about your pronouns. And they get weird colors in their hair. Like, be afraid of them. Look at these Joe Rogan was spreading that thing about they're kids who are furries, and now because there are these kids who want to be animals, we have to keep litter boxes in classrooms now, which was like a complete bullshit lie. His friend who told him that story was even like, yo, you're misremembering my story, man, and he had to walk that back. But what we've experienced for the past 2 years is a political project that is meant on fomenting fear and distraction on behalf of the culture war that is made to get Republican Party support and rile up their base at the expense of trans people, women, and marginalized groups, and of course in favor inevitably of the Republican Party.
No, absolutely. They really capitalized off like basically a lot of game of telephone, right? Like one person says something one way and it just explodes into something much more horrific in the end in order to gaslight people into thinking they believe in something was going to come true. And in the end, who actually suffered the most out of it? Like you said, marginalized communities, women, all these groups really just, like we said before, and I remember when I didn't really remember until you brought up Dr. Seuss. And I was like, that's crazy, because at the time I remember hearing that and just thinking the absurdity of this. And it really is basically just like adding a little bit of gasoline and like, oh, it's just nothing there until you start a fire. But once a fire starts, even that little bit of Dr. Seuss and whatever we start playing around with, Joe Rogan talk about furries, it really ignites everything and just leads people down this path, because especially with a lot of Americans with like who easily subscribe to conservative belief systems, they come from that YouTube do your own research rabbit hole, and they just think that, oh yeah, I remember hearing something like that, which is not a source, but to them it's a source because it's just in their head somehow, and they just keep following us along the way. So it turns into an avalanche. It just explodes in speed. And I really, like, once again, I think that what people Rachel are doing and you got to attack the discourse early and either like delegitimize it, change the topic, make sure people are continuously focused on what's at hand. Because as we see what's coming up with the midterms, we start to play this game of like kind of getting like almost ADHD by jumping around and seeing these other off topics. And literally, we got to remember, at the end of the day, we need to vote the right way, and the right way is to ensure the rights of people in the trans community, marginalized communities, women. These things need to be the focal point, because that's fundamental rights for Americans and humans. And when we start playing this game of listening to what these conservatives use to gaslight us, is where we all get lost. And other people, well, not me, but us here, not even this chat, to be honest, but we know the majority, a lot of Americans, they get lost in that sauce. And it's about focusing and, like, don't worry about, oh, the Democrats suck with the economy. Yeah, man. But like, hey, dude, I want to have some rights. So just vote the right way, please. And it's important to stay focused in that way.
Yeah, it's all of this. Hey, we're going to make much ado about the U.S. government allowing you to choose your gender for Social Security or your passports. And we're going to make that into like, Matt Walsh is going to make his show about that for the next week. We need to understand that conservative politics works different than liberal politics or even leftist politics. Like, liberals or even on the left, like, I think this, largely holds true with voters, but I think regular voters are still susceptible to the same whims that anyone else is, right? But leftist voters just care about their stuff better. Hypocrisy matters a lot more. Details matter a lot more. But for Republican voters, just scare them. Make them afraid. Teach them to fear something they don't know or they don't understand. And that has more so than... Notice how there are really no Republicans who are talking about new policies. The last Republican I really remember talking about like a policy agenda and proposal was Paul Ryan about 12 years ago. When he was trying to be Speaker of the House and was like, we have an economic agenda that's going to lower taxes on this and it's gonna put gonna give small business on this. And like, there were charts, there was a presentation. Now it's Herschel Walker in a
is that Excel?
Yeah, now it's Herschel Walker in a badge, just saying, you want to know who's single-handedly making cops quit? Raphael Warnock is walking to every single local police force in every single country and single-handedly firing 90% of the police forces left and right because it's all Black Lives Matter, police brutality, hate, and Raphael Warnock's fault. Like, it's all become culture war crap. There's no policy at all because of, to bring it back to what Rachel Maddow's talking about, it's people in media, other than Power Report and other than a couple of other spaces here or there, are not contextualizing what's happening in a big picture message. That's why I don't do a daily show. I'm on my friends' daily shows on like TYT and things like that, and I don't fault them for it, but one reason I didn't like doing daily shows there and I was trying to work on other things that were more weekly, like Agitprop, for example, was because I fundamentally believe that you can get lost in the sauce of daily news and miss the forest for the trees. If you take a step back, breathe, and look at like the bigger issues that are going on, it's real easy. If you just like pay attention to like PowerPoint episodes in a chronological order, I designed it that way. So we could look back and go, this is how Republicans built their message to take over. Slowly, methodically, like Caesar said, just adding a little bit of gas to it. And so you had a lot of liberals this past week who were happy that, oh, they had a fever dream that their hero, Jon Stewart, has finally come back to save the day, to give them some like really good information here, to finally speak truth to power, because we're just stuck in 2006 now. Like, that's just America. But no, like, honestly, like, I'll play this clip here, we'll play parts of it, but Jon Stewart absolutely eviscerated this anti-trans politician, and I forget where she was really fast. I'm going to figure out exactly where, but I'll play some of this clip as we get started from his Apple TV show Problem with Jon Stewart, so we can kind of get at Jon Stewart's line of questioning here, because this is the fiercest I have seen someone in like mainstream media. Apple TV's questionably mainstream, but Jon Stewart's definitely a mainstream household name, like forcefully raising like the bullshit that's coming around with this fear around trans people. So let's watch this.
Whose guidelines do you follow for pediatric cancer?
Well, I think if my child, who is 4, if I was faced with that terrible decision, then I would be speaking to my doctor. And if my doctor recommended something that I disagreed with, then I would get a second opinion.
And this is Arkansas Attorney General Leslie Rutledge, who has been...
What a title.
Who has been one of those people, like her state banned gender-affirming care for minors. Has been one of those people who's been on the front of peddling this. Look at what they're doing. They're trying to groom your kids by... Yeah, let's let Jon Stewart do the work here.
And that's what I believe, that these parents need to make sure that they're encouraged to get numerous opinions when they're talking about an irreversible step.
You're not
their
letting
child's
them. The state's not saying get another opinion. What they're saying is you can't. What you're actually saying is the opposite.
No, that's actually not at all what the state said. The state simply said that you cannot perform these procedures, and so parents should get another opinion.
No. A second opinion means the procedure is still available, but it might not be for you. Talk to someone else to confirm whether it's for you, or you go somewhere else. She's literally saying, no, we're giving people the option. We're saying you have no option, so find another one. Find a second opinion. I don't care what the second opinion is. The second opinion could be tic-tac-toe 3 in a row. That's the opinion. The opinion just can't be the thing you want. The opinion can't...
She said, hey guys, It's an opinion.
I got opinions. You've got opinions. Everyone's got opinions.
John Stewart, you don't know what a fucking opinion is? Oh my god, dude.
And children should want to have another opinion.
But that's not...
Because again, these are 9, 10, 11, 12
So if your
year olds.
child is suffering from pediatric cancer, and the state comes in and says to you, they recommend chemotherapy, but we're not going to let you do that. You can't. We think you should get a different opinion, and here's the organization we think you should get the opinion from. They're not the mainstream, but they're an organization. So that's who you have to be treated by. Does that sound like something you would accept?
I think that's a very extreme example. That's not at all in line with what we're talking about. We're not saying that at some point, because when you have cancer, it literally is, and particularly pediatric cancer, and having friends that have lost children to pediatric cancer, having a 4-year-old, I'm sure.
I've got some bad news for you. Parents with children who have gender dysphoria have lost children to suicide and depression.
They absolutely
because it's
have.
acute. And so these mainstream medical organizations have developed guidelines through peer-reviewed data and studies. And through those guidelines, they've improved mental health outcomes. So I'm confused why you follow AMA guidelines and AAAP guidelines for all other health issues in Arkansas, because we checked, but not for this.
They don't make them like this anymore.
Oh man, New York's finest. Damn. God, just one time before we talk about this, leave our trans friends alone, please. Just let them be treated as normal citizens. Stop this, please, man. I'm sick of it. Please. They don't put any other guidelines that make these parents of these children suffer and make their lives difficult or more difficult. Just leave them alone. Give them the same rights. Just stop it, please, dog. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh,
Adam Risch says about the earlier point, yeah, just keep getting opinions until you get the one we want. And that's exactly what they're saying.
Yeah, literally. Oh, that's a bad one. You can go back and check again. Oh, I don't like that one. Can you go back again?
It's like a gambler at the slot machine. It's like, no, this is my last time. There's one more game and I'm out. And he's like, nah, I didn't like that one. One more time.
It's more like, ooh, I'm having bad luck on this slot machine. I'm gonna try that one over there. Ooh, that one over there.
That's a much better analogy.
Literally though, like, oh my God, their lives matter. Leave them alone. I don't know what pit of volcano of Mordor this demon spawned from, but literally, like, just like the way she's sitting is making me uncomfortable. I cannot sit here, and it's crazy when people sit here fully dressed up in positions of power and elected positions with like insanely transphobic ideals and bills that have been passed to make the lives of literally just a everyday American's life more difficult. I cannot.
I hate it. I'm gonna shout out what El Gary says in the chat. Trans lives matter. This is what you were saying earlier, C's, about like they need to stop attacking trans people. Is that like, yes, they do, but even in and this is kind of the point I'm getting to, even in the Democratic Party, the issues and topics that trans people were bringing up, even before this post-Trump panic about trans people that was bubbling up during the Trump administration, Democrats were not standing up for it. People in the trans community were saying, hey, Democrats, we're being attacked in this way. You have all these like right-wing media pundits doing all this stuff where they're pulling Joe Rogan clips about transgender sports. And
oh my God.
They're using clips like that to go against people and spread lies about transgender people. There's a rise in violence that human rights watch organizations have been talking about people who are trans who are being assaulted or worse for their identities. And like Democrats weren't doing enough about it then. What are you going to say, Cease?
No, you're right, because that's a great point, because remember, Democrats are busy running defense on the rising crime of robberies in Beverly Hills and these rich buildings, the crime is up, the petty crime. These 15 teenagers are going to Lakewood Mall and stealing out of Eclairs. This is a huge problem. But when literally rise in homicides, suicides, and the lives literally of trans people and other marginalized communities are devastatingly being affected, the Democratic Party, I don't think they did an adequate job in addressing some of that and running defense to corroborate insane points that people like Joe Rogan were coming up with, talking about just like, and that I actually subscribe to what we talked about earlier, where they would just put these little things in there until it flames up and explodes. And now we have this lady who's a literally attorney general, like running and passing bills within, I mean, Arkansas, of course, sadly not surprised, but still should not be happening. Even though we're not surprised it's happening in a state like that, I'm glad Jon Stewart is sitting with her, because even if we're not surprised, it shouldn't happen whatsoever in any state.
It shouldn't happen whatsoever in any state. Democrats should not be playing defense. They should be playing offense and saying, hey, you want to talk about rising crime? Let's talk about the rising crime against Asian Americans. Let's talk about the rising crime against women. Let's talk about the rising crimes against gender nonconforming people. Before we talk about rising crime, which is, by the way, rising more in red states and in red places and in places that voted for Trump than it even is in the cities. Listen, I've got my own taste of rising crime in the cities, all right? I live in Hollywood. I see what the streets are like. I had my car broken into in San Francisco this year. Don't talk to me about rising crime. Like, I understand those streets, okay? But no one, Democrat or Republican, is talking about crimes against marginalized communities. Of course Republicans won't, but why won't Democrats reframe the rhetoric around that? Because they're afraid and because they're shady at being politicians. And so they end up looking at, oh, thank God we have these comedian saviors to do our fucking messaging jobs, that we hire strategists and consultants and pay them six-figure salaries, just throwing it into the money pit over nothing. Like, honestly, like, should they be paying should the Democratic Party be paying Jon Stewart and John Oliver for their messaging? Because this shit's
and Bill
better.
Burr. We need Jon Stewart, John Oliver, and Bill Burr running defense for the Democratic
Running
Party.
offense
right
for the Democratic Party is what I'm trying to talk about.
Offense. It's ridiculous.
Dude, like, and so, yeah. What do you want to say before I get to the John Oliver stuff?
No, you watch. Think about whenever you watch a debate or any of these discussions, how many times conservatives bring up fake statistics, not confirmed or verified data and statistics and metrics and statistics of what happens in these communities and states they don't even know really about, in areas they've never been to. They bring up all these stats, and you never see that on the opposite side. It'd be lovely to see Democrats bring real statistics up to attack points, such as we saw the Georgia one, where there was like discussions about, how Fulton County has rising crime, when the whole time crime's gone down there. Okay, crime has gone down, but that the conservative talking point is that the crime is so crazy over there. Like they get to run the attack with the stats. Democrats play defense, and people that don't even like Democrats go, why would I believe what you're saying? I believe what my party's saying first. That's because we never ran offense on it first and let them run defense and give me those fake stats to corroborate my actual real statistics. I'd love to see that. But I feel like if it does happen, it's on a very minor level, and it needs to happen way more offense for Democrats.
You're 1,000% right, C's. And the truth is, like, you can't only do one thing. You have to make appeals to people who like emotional appeals, because the fear mongering works, but like, make sure you can not weaponize fear, but get people to overcome their fears for better politics. Appeals to ethics and logic work as well. So use statistics, use data, use information like this. So for example, to segue again, when people say that there is a pandemic of transgender kids, like all of a sudden, there used to not be any people with transgender, there used to be no gay people, now all of a sudden, because of liberals in the media, this is rising race of people. And now we're just understanding and having a vocabulary about these things, so we can say, hey, being gay is a thing, being lesbian or trans or bi or pan or asexual is a thing, it's a category now. Now people feel a little bit less confused about how they're already feeling, and they can have a category to identify with. And so, yes, you're seeing those categories go up because they're new options. When you have a new flavor of ice cream, All of a sudden, hey, they didn't have people who liked double mint chocolate chip with like cherry sprinkles before. This is ridiculous. The liberal media is pushing this new flavor of ice cream. Yeah, it's a new flavor of ice cream. You've given people a language to something they want. It's ridiculous. That's point number one. Point number two is their logic is just dumb. As is explained by this John Oliver clip here, is that once you give people an opportunity to do something, you just get a natural rebalance to what was already in society to begin with.
As for the rapid rise in kids identifying as trans, as the writer Julia Serrano has pointed out, when you look at a chart of left-handedness among Americans over the 20th century, you see a massive spike when we stopped forcing kids to write with their right hand, and then a plateau. That doesn't mean everyone became left-handed or that there was a rapid onset southpaw dysphoria. It means people were free to be who they fucking were. And to the extent that some young people are just exploring their gender identity, how exactly is that a bad thing? Who the fuck are they hurting? As for the
100% right. No one's hurting anything by exploring their identity. It's just a phase, Mom. All right? And the people who are like, listen, if you're at the point where you are experiencing gender dysphoria and you're at the point where like, I don't feel comfortable in my body with the set of parts that I have, that's usually after a years long process and exploration of that. It's not a snap thing. Like, you know how my 6-year-old nephew, which is what they are talking about right now. My 6-year-old nephew was really into dinosaurs, not so much into dinosaurs right now. He really likes sea life right now, right? That's a interest, okay? When it's something that is as personal about you as that, you're not going to change your genitals at like age 5 or 7 or 9 and then decide all of a sudden you want to change it back. Oh, also, by the way, you can't do that without parents who are also on board. Most people, a lot of people who are trans, like trans kids, have a hard time getting their parents on board because of all this like bigoted stuff that's going out there. So if you have the layer of the kid and the layer of the parents who are willing to go through with this thing, and you have to be a certain age to do it, then that's freedom. That's what you get to do. Last point. I'm from Los Angeles. I have a lot of friends from a lot of different cultures and classes and social spheres. I have a lot of friends whose parents just let them get nose jobs and paid for them when they turn 16 or 18. There was no conversation about, oh no, that's your cultural nose, or like, oh, won't you regret it or won't you hate it in the future? No, parents are totally cool with that, okay? We have no problem with people's freedom with cosmetic surgeries they do to their body to make people feel better. And I'm not going to, I will place a value judgment on gender reparative surgery over cosmetic like nose surgery or something like that. I will, because that's something that really, really gets to people's mental health and mental wellness. That, again, Democrats are just allowing people like Joe Rogan just run away with and infect the culture. And it's not until Joe Rogan's friends like Bill Burr accidentally go, hey man, what the fuck are you talking about?
No, you're absolutely right. Lord knows that a time in my life where I would be agreeing with like a Boston man is nuts to me. But no, and obviously I can't exactly speak on so many things because I just see myself as in support of everybody in the community. I support all the moves and my friends in my life who've made these big decisions, which are, I think people underrate how difficult it is for them. They don't just think about what their parents, they think about how their whole life changes. We talk about life-changing decisions, but you don't really know a life-changing decision until you make that kind of decision. That's massive. You know, that's a massive one. So I've always been in here in support of it. So I don't like when people, if you're not going to be supportive of it, I like to just tell them, just move out of the way. Don't get in the way. If you don't support, you don't like it, just get out the way and let them live their life, because it's not up to you on what the decision they made. From you talking about cosmetic surgeries, which I've seen as well too. And when I was in high school and I've known some people, no one even batted an eye. Maybe there was the classic mean girl snicker, but like no one was like, wow, like I can't actually listen to you talk right now because I can't believe you live in a household where people ascribe to the belief system that you need to change your nose. No one ever did that. No one went politics r/debate Andy on someone who got a nose job at 16. No one did that. So it just really sucks that, you know, we're holding people in the trans community and others like others who are really find out their gender identity and figure out where they want to do in their life and where they're at and what their comfortable decision they're making. It's really annoying that there's people trying to get in the way of that. Just get the fuck out of the way.
Yeah,
honestly,
and it's really
please.
annoying that we're at the point where it's like John Oliver and Jon Stewart, cisgender white guys, are the only ones who are like, not because anyone in the Democratic Party was like, hey, yo, can you whip up a clip for us? They're like, well, damn, because no one else is doing it. And again, John Oliver was a writer for Jon Stewart. These guys have been doing this shit, cleaning up the Democratic Party's messaging for 20 years.
Daily Show employees.
This one comedy room.
Comedy Central News was our most legitimate. That's crazy.
For 20 years running.
Oh my god.
That speaks to the failure of the Democratic Party. Is that like the Republicans literally have Truth Social, they have Parler, they have Blaze, and all these other different things. Like they have all these other different like platforms, right? That they use and say, oh, we're constantly being victimized and the liberal media is constantly coming after us. So look, we have this. And the left is like, liberals and the Democrats are like, much like the Labour Party in Canada or in England, they're just like, we have a sandwich. We've got a banana. Like they just absolutely unprepared for the game. And so really fast, I know you're wrapping up on timesies. I want to wrap up here with John Oliver digging into the most annoying thing of all, which is this whole thing on trans people in sports, which basically it's been giving Joe Rogan content for the past 5 years on his podcast. For
this man is still creating insane visuals from like a Futurama episode where they had like the Amazon women that were 7 feet tall. Like that's all he's like feeding to these brainless Joe Rogan stands and alpha brain consumers on their On It fitness. Oh my god.
Let's break into this.
States have passed laws aimed at protecting youth sports. And South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem even made her state's bill a centerpiece of a campaign ad.
In South Dakota, only girls play girls' sports. Why? Because of Governor Kristi Noem's leadership. Noem has been protecting girls' sports for years and never backed down. Now, Governor Noem has a bill that will give South Dakota the strongest law in the nation protecting female sports. Doing the work, delivering results. Governor Kristi Noem.
Okay, if you time traveled here from the past and the first thing you saw was this ad, you would think two things. One, wow, the campaign centers around youth sports. I guess literally every other problem in America has been solved. And two, she is not pulling off that cowboy hat. And you would be right, but only about the hat part. People like Noem love stoking fear over the spectre of trans athletes, girls specifically, having an unfair advantage and taking away scholarship opportunities. But there are vanishingly few examples nationwide of trans athletes attempting to compete at all. And in Noem State specifically, the head of their high school sports association could name exactly one transgender female athlete who competed and who graduated several years ago. So there are more athletes in this shot from Noem's ad than there are trans girls known to have competed in South Dakota schools. But even if there were more, discriminating against them would still obviously be wrong. And it would still be weird that state legislatures were getting involved in decisions that are usually made by organisations governing the sports in question. And it is worth knowing, even at the elite level, conversations around this aren't being handled with flat-out bans. The IOC has announced that it will set rules on a sport-by-sport basis, but working on the general principle that no athlete should be excluded from competition on the assumption of an advantage due to their gender. And it is pretty remarkable that a trans athlete could theoretically compete in the Olympics, but not in South Dakota under-12 soccer, a sport that genuinely only exists to obliterate parents' weekends.
Literally, South Dakota sucks at every sport ever in history. I don't even want to hear them talk about sports there.
But like, I wish Kyle Kalinske, not to bring it back to this, but that's kind of like where I centered the whole thing, is that like trans people are under attack in the United States, and all Kyle Kalinske can think to do, listen, he has Joe Rogan on speed dial. Like he could text him at any time and they're buddies and they get along and they do podcasts together. And your friend is like one of the top spreaders of this misinformation that now has politicians jumping over themselves to embarrass themselves over this complete non-issue of some supposed advantage of transgender athletes in sports, all right? Someone on the left has that ability, and instead they're like, gee, Joe, you're doing such a good job. Gee, Joe, I really hate it when people on my side talk bad about you because they have nothing to talk about. They have nothing on. I really like you, Joe. Everyone's so mean to you, Joe. You're such a good guy, Joe. That's what made me so apoplectic about Kyle Kalinske, and that's what makes every leftist who has come on camera to like defend him show their ass. Because that means you care about Joe Rogan and you care about these other weird people more than you do trans people, more than you do trans leftists, more than you do your own fucking political beliefs. And that's what pisses me off about pundits, because it's like, you're supposed to be speaking for these people, you're supposed to be speaking for the downtrodden, and you're like, nah, just kidding. I like my relationship, my friendship with the comedian Thumb from Boston more than I care about the trans people and the marginalized groups I supposedly make my career off of talking about.
It's like, oh, hey, you know, my rent's going up, my gas is $7, worried about my Social Security, insulin is, where the hell's insulin at? It's too expensive, can't afford it. But what? You're telling me there's transgender people that are allowed to play U12 soccer in South Dakota? Hell no, I'm voting on this right now. You literally have campaign ads running off Joe Rogan Bro Science, off of podcasts where he's literally like referencing just super transphobic ideas, literally thinking like everything in life is like a Joanna Man movie where this is how things are going down with extreme transphobia. It's like, just stop. Like he said, literally the person can name one individual. It's I cannot believe you couldn't run an entire fucking political ad on this. It's almost like when you watched it, it looked like it was like one of those like literally Daily News like skits. Like they're doing like a little skit where you're like, oh, like here's this stupid SNL skit about like how this super transphobic conservative would probably run. No, it's literally how she's running. And there's just no way that we can allow things like this to continue. Like South Dakota, I mean, I was going to say really heinous things that it seems like YouTube is dishing out bans today, so I'm just going to relax. YouTube is on their ban tip today. So I'm gonna take a step back and just shake my head and
hold until relieved, sir. Hold until relieved.
Yes.
Yeah. Overall, I'm not a huge fan of Jon Stewart and John Oliver. I think Jon Stewart especially. I mean, Jon Stewart has in his history some horrendously anti-trans jokes that he made fun of on Comedy Central. And yeah, it was a totally different time. So I think that clip that Jon Stewart did earlier is like at bare minimum reparations for the shitty behavior he did back when he was the Jon Stewart, the Daily Show host in Comedy Central, right?
And that was a popular thing among, especially like comedian and comedy in general, especially back then Pro too. And he comes from a comedy base.
And so like, I say that with that caveat. I don't excuse that behavior. I think is all wrong. But hey, if a guy like that is going to turn around later in his career and go, trans kids are killing themselves because of bullshit you're doing, and I'm going to call you out on my show, that's praxis. I think that's like, that's a model. That's a model for people to change and grow and become better, and not just become better and change their minds, but make up for their actions by becoming strong fighters. So shout out to Jon Stewart for that, even though I think he's a shit lib. John Oliver, I incredibly find not funny at all. I think he's just like the most unfunny person to be called a comedian, have a comedic show on HBO. But I think he's been killing it lately because like, listen, there's no other person in media who can make 25-minute monologues about boring shit go viral every single week like it's nothing. And it's substantive, it's smart, it's very factually accurate. And so I gotta stop hating for a little bit. Dan's gonna stop hating for this whole episode. And, you know, I'll give my props to Oliver and Jon Stewart this time.
Whoa. Well, this is 2022 is being real weird this year. Dan is switching it up. But no, like I think also going off of your point, Dan, I think to extra focus on it is like it's great that these two are speaking on this and shedding light and being a message of it. But it's sad that they're the face of the message. You know what I mean? Like the face is people that have obviously done things in the past and switched sides. I think those are always great voices to have in support of a message or an idea or ideals, but I don't think we should work on them not being the face of it. We should have people that are more figureheads with own personal experience who have gone through it themselves, that are the face of the party and the network and ideas, so we can look to those to understand their point of view and they can speak on it better. And people like John Oliver and Jon Stewart, who decide to are human beings that have brains and learn what's right and wrong over time, can join in and lend support and bring their audience and voices along with it. I think that's a better message that we need to see moving forward.
I agree. I want to stay on for just one more comment, and then it'll be good. So Adam Risch over on YouTube says, I'm going to disagree with Oliver on some of this. They do, I think trans people do have an advantage in some sports, but that's up to the sports to manage. And then he says, my take on this is that the government doesn't need to be involved. And I'll concede to that. There have been, like, again, they will look and cherry pick into some of these cases, and they'll find, like, okay, there was an athlete who transitioned and they end up just being, like, top of their sport, whether it was, like, wrestling or boxing or something like that or whatever, right? And again, these are like middle school or college leagues, and it's like one of them. And it's a new thing that I think it's up to the sports leagues to decide, and not for politicians to make cheap political points off of. Because when politicians start to legislate what people can and can't do, I mean, I can't believe I'm describing this to Republicans, but this shows how fickle a lot of Republican, rights and freedoms dogma is. It's only a cover for the freedoms and dogmas that they like. But for a rights and freedoms kind of party, I don't think the government should be legislating how sports work, right? Like, let the people who are actual athletes, like, observe what's going on in these cases. And if they're like, oh, yeah, sure, people are willing to go through the years and decades of ridicule, people misunderstanding them, the gender dysphoria, and all the other things that actually come with a transgender experience, just to win a couple of college sports games or high school sports games. Like, sure, buddy, if you believe a lot of people doing that and that's becoming a problem, then, like, we'll come and cross that bridge there. And to be clear, I don't, Adam, think you believe this, but this is, like, to that kind of group of people. Yeah. I think ultimately we're on the same page here, that, like, well, I would definitely say that this issue is overblown. You could argue that on a sport by sport basis there is uncompetitive advantages or incompetitive advantages that are given. Ultimately, I think that's, like, issue number 600 priority list wise in what's going on in the world right now, and that it's up to the sports to decide. What do you think, C's? Especially because you cover We Made a Podcast sports.
For sure. And a real quick point, and going off what you said, Adam, as a former athlete myself, I think that there's just two quick points to make. I think that, number one, let's lend ourselves to the time in which that becomes an issue, right? The moment that there's transgender athletes dominating on U12 soccer in South Dakota, maybe there's a different discussion that those committees can have about making it fair, quote unquote, for the youth athletes to assimilate and play better. There can be a discussion that they can take care of within themselves, within the committees, to make it a fair base for young athletes to compete in. That's, I think. And also when it comes to sport, especially in my experience, a lot of times things that become disadvantages, the objective of sports is to create advantages out of them, learn how to adapt, learn how to grow, how to make changes. Sports in general, of course, they all started off the way they start off, like gender on each side. There's been transitions of different sizes, over the years, where now there's like larger athletes, faster athletes. Humans have always been able to adapt and change to what it's faced in front of them, whether it's shape, strength, speed, everything. So I think that we can lend ourselves to have the ability to adapt and grow from it. But I don't think it's fair to, have government and politics and campaigns ran against something that they don't have any idea of, they have no experience firsthand in, and also shutting down and alienating people's lives without really understanding, like, what it entails. So I think that's where it's like, okay, like, y'all just got to back up, because you really don't know what you're talking about, these politicians. And I think it's better to, like, almost like having like a trial period or time to really understand and see this in the sport itself. Yeah. Exactly. The government has no business legislating this, and I agree with that. That's what I agree in the end of it.
Yeah. I think that's very well said. C's, thank you for joining on this episode. Appreciate your time. Appreciate you coming out. We Made It podcast. What's been going on there?
We Made It podcast. We have just added a new member to our show,
Woo!
Holly, a Canadian. We only hire Canadians. Go away. I don't want to hear anymore. Go away. Only Canadians.
Yanks
please.
need not apply.
We only rock with Canadians. As two fake Canadians like me and Bam are, we had to hire a real one so we could legitimize our operation as a Canadian soccer broadcast. We have done this now. Please subscribe to us. Also, go out and vote. Don't go the day after like Dan. Get out there, express. Even if you're in a community or area where it's heavily blue or Democratic, still go vote. Vote for local people. Vote for your council members. Don't let the Tito Ortizes sneak through the ropes. Do not do that. Okay, get out there and vote.
Last question: Qatar World Cup. Qatar World Cup. You know, I'm asking about it. When does the coverage start?
The coverage is going to start late November, right around the time Americans are enjoying a horrific holiday called Thanksgiving. The World Cup will begin. USA will unfortunately be in it. We call them the USSF Mafia. But also, in relation, the good thing that did happen now, there is equal pay within U.S. soccer, so the men and women get equal pay. Even though we made a podcast, we believe that the women should get paid more than the men based upon their awards and their achievements.
I was talking to... actually used your bit when I was talking to Senator Nina Turner the other day. I was like, actually, I disagree with gender pay equity in women's and men's soccer. Just based on what the women's soccer team has achieved compared to the men's soccer team, the women should be paid astronomically more.
Yeah, you're supposed to get paid when you do better. What's going on here, dog? Well, what? I get employee of the year for 15 years in a row, and I'm getting paid less than Joe Schmo over here. Why?
Yeah, like U.S. men's national team is basically warming bench over here, while like the women's team's actually doing all the work. But
the men's national team is like the tickets sold at like that Long Beach Convention Center for the Ice Dogs. The women's team's like the damn Lakers. It's levels to this, homie. Like, what are we talking about here? You want to watch Harlem Globetrotters perform in the Ice Dogs Arena, or do you want to watch fucking Lakers play at Crypto.com NFT Arena? Come on now.
Please have me join for some of the Carter coverage. I'm going to join. I'll join to cover English soccer, and I will be the least nationalistic English football announcer in world politics.
Please, soccer is extremely political. Anybody that's into politics, soccer is the best sport for you, especially World Cup time, because people like me and Bam, our picks for wins are strictly political. Like, oh, you think I'm sorry, they were kind of whining last year with human rights. You're not gonna win this game. I'm not picking that win.
Hey man, that's how it be. I really can't wait for it. It's gonna be a great time. It's honestly gonna be a much needed brain break for my mental health to follow that and follow y'all doing that. You're gonna be my number one source. We Made It podcast, all social media platforms, the podcast. Now with Holly's your new co-host, right?
Yeah, Holly's our new co-host, a member of the community herself, a wonderful individual, player, and extremely intelligent. I do love to see that, especially our show, it's extremely diverse with different people of different backgrounds, viewpoints, gender identities, everything. We have all that going on here. We're extremely inclusive and we're open-minded. You know, I think a lot of shows and a lot of people are fanboys and fangirls of certain things. Please come. All backgrounds are welcome. We love all different opinions. It's been amazing being on this episode. Hope you guys enjoy the show. Subscribe, follow, like, do it all. Power Report. We're here every week.
Appreciate you. Have a good one, Cease. Peace.
See ya. See you guys.
All right. Gonna do a little bit of a reset here. Caesar, one of a kind. What a great person. And your friend Sam, I see you in chat as well. Democrats need to bully Republicans more straight up. I 100% agree, and we've talked about this a lot. And you know what? In C's 12 minutes OT, I'm billing you now, Dan. No, but Sam, if you're still watching, like, this is something I've talked about with Hassan, and this is one of the things I'm most proud, like, no matter how hard he canceled he gets, himself, no matter how hard he gets himself canceled, I will always be proud of Hassan for what I think he understands based on our conversations we had just, like, coming up, which is that it's important to be on the offense with your messaging. Never accept their framing, never accept their attacks. Like, put the Republicans on the back of their heels for a change. And that gives you an opportunity as a party, as the Democratic Party, to tell people what you're going to do, inspire people, like make people dream about what you want to accomplish. So, yeah, I think that's just going to be the good stuff. Moving in to other things now, we're going to talk about a really interesting news story here. Not getting a lot of play, but Dark Brandon's cold trade war. I'm going to repeat that now because I'm recording. Dark Brandon's cold trade war. This is something that happened just last week, and if you weren't paying attention, you wouldn't have caught it. So I'm glad I have a show like this to be able to talk about this stuff. So this news report is going to do a little bit of explaining of what's going on. Basically, this is new trade policy from Joe Biden and his administration, and it's going to impact how we deal with China, and it's going to impact whether or not, we're actively getting into a war with China or not. This is a very economic strategy. It's a lot of economic saber rattling. So let's watch this video and get some details.
What are we learning?
Obviously, it's been a big week for chips globally with the big sell-off. TSMC, by the way, the world's biggest fab for chips, is out with earnings later today. And this is more evidence that, of course, this tension on the technological front between China and the United States is ramping up after that Biden administration move last week that we just outlined prior to my report here. And essentially, we are learning from sources that a number of these U.S. chip equipment makers, like Applied Materials, KLA, and Lam Research, have or will start withdrawing its staff from its customers in China, including, as you just mentioned, Yangtze Memory Technologies. It's the largest maker of most advanced DRAM and memory chips in China. They need that equipment. And oftentimes these big companies from the United States, like Applied Materials, will send their staff to their customers around the world, including in China, to fine-tune that equipment. Well, if they're withdrawing that, that will deal a severe blow, obviously, to the ambitions that Xi Jinping, among others, have outlined as making, advanced semiconductors a key development and national security priority in China. We're also hearing
So let me break this down for you in the beginning. Naturally, China's a major trading partner of ours, and we are often working with the Chinese government and Chinese corporations, excuse me, on making sure that we have enough chips for our computers, enough chips for our technology, all those kind of things. What Joe Biden announced is basically that a lot of Americans who are doing work with Chinese vendors for work on certain applied materials and certain computer chips like this have been informed to immediately cease those operations because those operations will become illegal. Meaning, it will be illegal for you to be an American and work in China for one of these unapproved manufacturing companies. And this really hurts China here. Or it has the potential to really hurt China because, while China has a lot of ability to produce and manufacture these chips on their own, a lot of the information, a lot of the knowledge sharing is happening through United States immigration, the immigration of United States workers, especially when you're building products that ultimately end up in the hands of Americans. It helps to have that localized touch, just as if you were America or England, you're producing products for West Africa or South Asia, you would also want to have someone from those communities, or at least someone who's familiar with those things, to make sure that certain things aren't lost in translation when you're communicating them. Both in the products themselves when users see them and when you're handling and doing business. And so, by handing down this decree, so to speak, again, that United States workers in a lot of cases are not supposed to work with certain Chinese chip manufacturers. Well, that upends a lot of Chinese business. And if this gets expanded to more companies, right now this is just one Chinese semiconductor manufacturer. But if this gets expanded to more companies that are operating in China, then this could have a major impact on something that China is doing really well at exporting, which are chips. So Samsung Electronics, SK Hynix, those are South Korean semiconductor companies. Taiwan Semiconductors from Taiwan, and then SMIC is Hong Kong. So that's a different, complicated political situation relative to China, and so things are complicated there. Let's continue playing this.
ASML, that's the Dutch chip equipment maker, is telling its U.S. employees not to continue to service its customers in China. So again, this is all coming on the back of these new regulations from the Biden administration last week. Separately, but related, obviously, we have SK Hynix putting out a statement saying they've been given at least a 1-year reprieve of selling or putting its equipment into its factories in China for at least 1 year. Yonhap is also reporting that Samsung Electronics has also gotten a 1-year reprieve. So this is a space that we're going to obviously have to watch as the Asian chip makers, which both obviously serve China and the United States, have to make these delicate balancing act and choices going forward. China or the United States. Has it come down to that?
Yes, that's kind of what is on the line here. That is the dark brand in trade war. Is in trade wars, you try to force a choice. Countries are trying to force a choice between, do you do what is good for you? Which would be, okay, if you're America, right? And you are doing what America is doing here, which is making it harder for China to do business as usual, where it's utilizing labor from Americans for its semiconductor business. Now, the United States has said, hey, listen, we're going to spare a couple of companies here that also do operations in China, even though they're based elsewhere. But this is a warning that we can and are willing to make this effective to all companies here. So it forces China to make a choice. Are you going to meet some of America's terms because of the place they've been put in a negotiating standpoint? You know, this is a really severe thing. Or will China make the decision, hey, we need to bite the bullet right now and cut ourselves off from America entirely, or at least if it's not entirely, more drastically, and make it so we start to institute the process where we're hiring internally within China to fill some of these more American roles. And we find ways to fulfill, you know, whatever those American roles we're doing that were uniquely benefited to having an American working those. We figure out how to work without those. That may take work, that may take time, that may take energy and resources. That is still something that is a calculation in America making the shot in the trade war. But it is ultimately forcing China to make that position of, do they want to continue relying on the United States for this thing, therefore come to the negotiating table on something America wants to talk about, or does China want to dig in, say, F off to the United States, and assert itself and its power in semiconductor manufacturing? And I don't know if it's clear from the way I'm pitching the story, but my opinion is that it's going to be the latter. That China would much rather head off any dependency on the United States at the pass and implement for itself an economy that is as decoupled from the whims of an American leader as possible. Because as China has seen, under the Trump administration, under the Biden administration, Democrats and Republicans are willing to do things that directly fly in the face of efforts at combining the economies of the United States and China, supposedly to the benefit of both. China would be able to grow on the world stage by giving much of their population access to American goods and American capital flows, which have allowed China to develop faster than any country in history. At the downside of, the political system controlling that is inherently, even more anti-democratic than the United States. Coming back to the United States, what we get out of the deal are cheaper goods and cheaper products, but what we lose is autonomy of and control of our supply lines and goods, and keeping that internally so we have more of a say of how that happens. And those jobs went overseas. They never came back. All those companies lied. We lost jobs in that deal. And the global economies, the global capitalist economies, mind you, race to the bottom for cheap labor as we're going down to China now having a middle class where they're like, hey, we don't want to make this stuff anymore. We want another country to make our cheap shit. So they look towards Taiwan and Bangladesh. You get this capitalist race to the bottom, where some country is going to be at that bottom doing the low wage labor that is most exploitative, that is most dangerous, that none of the other countries want to do. Some of that technology, some of the advancements will trickle down, but not enough, unfortunately, not enough. And so I think that's largely enough from, that's largely enough from that part of the story, but I do want to just emphasize that there's something we definitely want to watch here as people are, as the economy keeps rolling on, because the American economy is so entrenched with the Chinese economy, all these tit-for-tat conflicts are going to result in price increases and price changes. There could be some decreases, feasibly, it's possible, but these will largely be increases because as different countries and companies are adjusting to these conditions, there'll be growing pains, and before prices can go down, prices will go up as those growing pains and inefficiencies really start playing themselves out into the market. I think I've been talking a lot of economics lately, and it's because I'm an economics major, but I think I'm going to have just to tease what I want to plan for next week. Maybe it'll work out, maybe it won't, but I think what I want to have is one of my good friends with a lot of knowledge in economics who can help make economics really interesting on the show so we can bounce some of these ideas together. A think tank, if you will. Let's see. About 30 minutes left. What else have I got to talk about? Many things. A lot of things. I'll go to the thing that... Oh, actually don't have that many stories left. I have 2 more stories left, so we may end a little bit early. I'll start with the thing that angers me, and then we'll go to the fun note. All right? How's that? How's that for a nice little Dan ending, okay? So Ron DeSantis' latest low-blow political stunt is lowier and blowier than I could have imagined. I mean, yes, it's all pretty bad, a lot of the stuff that Ron DeSantis does, but again, these political stunts, like what he did with the flying the migrants who didn't know what situations they were in to Martha's Vineyard. Whether it's the Top Gov ads, all these different things to get attention, whether it's of Trump voters or of MAGA people or of QAnon people or just mainstream conservatives in his gubernatorial race. Ron DeSantis has shown that beyond all else, he wants to play for the cameras, even if that means people's lives are at expense. Case in point, his latest political stunt is arresting people who are accused of voting illegally, because Republicans are the party of declaring elections that they win to be legitimate and elections that they lose to be fraudulent. That's all it is the story. They do not care about voter fraud, which in election after election is shown to be minuscule and borderline non-existent, far from existent enough to tip these scales in any election it's been observed in, because it's so statistically insignificant. Nevertheless, Donald Trump and conservative secretaries of state who are responsible for counting votes in states across the country are doing what they can to seal the deal for Republicans electorally. So again, that only Republicans can win, and the only thing the Democrats can do is lose. That's gone to the level where, as the New York Times is reporting, video is showing confusion as Florida police arrest people on voter fraud charges. So this crackdown on voter fraud announced by DeSantis in August seems to have ensured that former felons who were puzzled, it seems to have ensnared former felons who were puzzled that they were accused of violating voter laws. So here's some video for the New York Times we'll play right here to color the situation. This is body cam footage of a new police force that essentially, or a subdivision of the Florida police force that Ron DeSantis has developed just to arrest people who are accused of voter fraud. Now, would these instances of supposed voter fraud have tipped the scales in any election? No. But I'm not going to argue for voter fraud. Obviously, voter fraud is bad, but in the books in Florida, in order for it to be voter fraud, you need to have intent. You need to have people who intended to vote illegally. And all the people in the body cam footage that the New York Times has here are confused because they feel they have the right to vote. So it's going to make that case very difficult. Not that stops Ron DeSantis, because at least he gets his political video. But let's watch some of this here.
So, apparently, I guess you have a warrant?
For what?
I'm not sure.
For voter stuff, man.
For voters.
It's what it is. I think the agents with FDLE talked to you last week about some voter fraud, voter stuff, when you weren't supposed to be voting, maybe.
I didn't.
So,
what are they talking
about? That's what we're not the case agents, but what you got to do, they have reduced your bond quite a bit. It's 2 felony charges for voter fraud, but they've reduced it to $500 bonds. So it's $1,000 total.
Oh my God, man! What?
So, yes, sir. So unfortunately, right now we're gonna have to take you to jail, but you got a bond right away. You don't have to go to first appearance, nothing like that. So
a bond? I didn't do. What did I did wrong? We don't know. We're not the case agents. All they did, they sent us over here because you had a warrant.
Right.
And whenever people have warrants, the people coming to arrest the people, they don't know nothing. You know what I mean? So. You have anything on you at all that you're not?
Which is a messed up system in itself, right? Because the people, I mean, obviously you want some separation between these things because you technically shouldn't have judge, jury, and executioner be the same person, although you'll note that this guy has a gun and cops oftentimes are judge, jury, and executioner in the streets. But you see this with evictions. It's just the person's job to evict people. It's not necessarily the responsibility of anyone beyond that to know what's going on. So I think that's just messed up. It's just a general observation. But yeah, as you're seeing here, this man's very confused as to him not being able to vote. He's not having, oh, you caught me. Like, oh, I didn't know. Like, no. He's like, he thought he had the right to vote. And now these cops have been hired to quote unquote do their job, which is to screw with this person trying to rehabilitate his life and add on costs to his life to the tune of at least $1,000 in bond. And then, whatever expenses go into fighting this. Even in the best case scenario where he gets like a GoFundMe lawyer or it's a public defender that's like covered or whatever, there's still costs, there's still stresses that go into this. Ron DeSantis doesn't care. He's using this for political points.
Not supposed to have.
Just don't put your hands in your pockets.
Yeah. Can you turn around real quick?
Can I please?
I gotta put you in handcuffs, buddy. I got you.
Wow, man. Why are they doing this to me? I didn't do nothing to nobody, man. Voter fraud. What is voter fraud?
Voting when you're not supposed to, sir, is what our understanding of it like that. Because of your sex offender status, you're not supposed to be voting.
Nobody, what they got? I don't know this.
So yeah, he was had to register as a sex offender. I'll read into this story here. In Florida, under a constitutional amendment approved by voters in 2018, many former inmates had their voting rights restored, but others did not, leaving many people uncertain or misinformed about their eligibility to vote. In one of the videos, Tony Patterson, this is what we just watched, 43, was standing outside of his Tampa residence when officers approached him on August 18th to tell him that they had an outstanding warrant for his arrest. He asked for what, and he says in this, what's wrong with his state? And again, he's being explained to here in this video that it's because he was not eligible to vote as a convicted sex offender, and he's being charged with 2 felonies for voting illegally. There's a lot wrong with criminal justice, which is why people talk about criminal justice reform. But the fact that we take people's right to vote away after they've, served whatever sentence or, they've like reached whatever thing is like, how else do people assimilate back into society or like, try to become normal and contribute to society again if they're robbed of most of their abilities to? I was on J.R. Jackson's show. J.R. Jackson, wonderful person, fan of PowerPort as well. He has a really good quote that's like saying about how people always say to pull yourself up by your bootstraps, but a lot of people don't have straps and they don't have boots. It's J.R. Jackson's line. And when you're saying people, okay, you've been charged with this crime or whatever, you serve your time or that's like the end of it, and you have to rebuild your life. If you're given nothing to rebuild your life with after all that's taken away, then what else are you going to get? So, according to court records, Patterson pleaded not guilty to the charges that he made a false statement about his voting status and cast about when he was eligible not to do so, which are third-degree felonies. Public defender for Patterson did not immediately respond to a request for comment. Patterson is among 20 former felons statewide whose arrests on fraud charges were showcased by DeSantis in an August news conference touting work by his new election crimes office, which has received about $1 million in state funding. $1 million that could have been used towards any service that could have helped former felons who have served their terms, live their lives and rebuild their lives. But nevertheless, it's going to this aggressive pursuit against voter fraud, even though, as the New York Times and others note, as I noted earlier, it's ultimately a minuscule problem. This is absolutely nothing but political theater, says a lawyer in Hillsborough County. And it's sad because these are people who are put in handcuffs, taken to jail, charged with felonies, and are facing prison sentences. 100% right. Legal experts, including at least one Republican state legislature, have said that many, if not all, of the 20 arrests appear unjustified because the supposed perpetrators have no idea that they were breaking the law. And as I said earlier, in Florida, a conviction of voter fraud requires proof of intent. And some defendants have said they're registered to vote only after being wrongfully assured that they could cast ballots under the constitutional amendment that restored voting rights to many former felons. I remember talking about that in a DFTI voter guide that I did for TYT that, hell, maybe I'll do for next week because that might be fun. In fact, the amendment excluded people convicted of murder or felony sex offenses who must apply separately to have their rights reinstated. And that gets this whole thing of we need to get people in the right position with their health care, with their economic situation, with their political situation, with their social situation, with their mental situation, everything. We need to put people in the right position to be on the right path. If they're repeat offenders, then there's like a different like path and way you handle that, but we don't have a rehabilitation system. We have a recidivism system. And that's what we need to fight and work against. So, even the police officer who drove Patterson to jail acknowledged that Florida's voter eligibility laws have been a source of confusion, saying there's fine print as far as my understanding goes. There's another video. Mrs. Oliver of Hillsborough County was backing out of her driveway to go to work that same morning, 18th of August, I want to say. Let me see. Just to be sure. Yep, 18th of August. So they were just busy that day. And officers confronted her and told her to get out of the vehicle because they had a warrant for arrest. And, oh my God, Ms. Oliver said. She told that she was ineligible to vote when she was released from prison 3 years ago after a 19-year stint for second-degree murder. This is similar to another person up here, 56-year-old Ramona Oliver, convicted of second-degree murder, but had completed her job sentence and rebuilt her life, marrying and holding a steady job. Yet these people have their rights to the political processes robbed against them. It's the same person, Ramona Oliver, just to be clear. Same person. But yeah, this happens with a number of different people. I hate this so much. You have some of this video here too, and we'll play it.
So, ma'am, we have a warrant for your arrest.
For what?
For voter fraud.
Good, how are you, sir?
Right?
Boss, how's it going?
Oh my God, hold on.
Wait.
Let me tell my husband.
We're telling him, he's right here.
Right here. So if you can put your hands behind your back, please.
Oh my God.
Do not move.
Ultimately, ma'am, you have a warrant? Okay. The warrant. Listen, hold on, listen. I know you caught off guard, I understand. Right? So you have a warrant, it's for voter fraud, okay? Hear me out. It's an ROR. You know what an ROR is?
Oh my God.
You go in, you get booked, and then they're going to release you from booking.
You can go right out.
You're going to be right back out. Okay?
Right back
but you have a warrant. And it's from FDLE, okay?
Okay.
All right? So I know you're caught off guard, but unfortunately that's how this stuff works, okay?
I'm like, what the hell?
So.
Okay.
Yep.
I'm like, voter fraud. I voted, but I ain't commit no fraud.
Well, so that's the thing. I don't know exactly what happened with it, but you do have.
That's all they have is that script, and they don't know why they're doing it, but they're doing it because it's their job. But listen, like ACAB all the way here, and this is like another example of it. But you know, like this is just like not the issue. This should not be something that people are actively doing here. It should be insane. Also, shout out to Hi Maha and thank you for the raid. Good to see you again. And also, I saw you on DW, the German news broadcast. So that is pretty rad. Yeah, talking about weed for German news on Twitch. That is what a time to be alive, Maha. Great work today. So yeah, appreciate y'all here. Unfortunately, we're not talking about Reed. We're talking about voter fraud and people who are being arrested because they were told they had the right to vote in Florida. But yeah, their lives are being upended. This is a woman who had been remarried and had served her sentence for 19 years for second-degree murder and had gotten a new job and remarried and all this stuff. And they just arrest her one day as she's backing out of her house and telling her, listen, it's all right. You'll be arrested and you'll get out of jail, but then you'll go back to jail. But ultimately, the problem is that, yeah, you are going to be, you're going to have to go to jail for doing something that you didn't know you did. And voter fraud in Florida, again, requires intent. None of these people being arrested for Ron DeSantis' political stunt are showing intent here. Does this confused woman look like intent?
No fraud.
Well,
okay.
Yep.
I'm like, voter fraud. I voted, but I ain't commit no fraud.
Well, so that's the thing. I don't know exactly what happened with it, but you do have a warrant. That's what it's for. Okay.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so I don't know what happened with that.
You think I would really commit fraud if I wanted? I just got out of jail 3 years ago.
Ma'am, I have no idea what even happened.
I got out, but God told me that I was here to go vote or whatever, because I was done my time.
Yep.
I was sick. I ain't owe nobody nothing.
Okay. Yeah, like I said, I don't know what happened. All I know is that you have a warrant.
Absolutely ridiculous. And so, again, this happened with Ron DeSantis' disgusting political stunt with trans people that he's doing in schools. You know, the don't say gay laws, that kind of thing. This happened when he shipped migrants to Martha's Vineyard. Where he's like, hey, Democratic states, here, deal with the immigration problem. And he was confused when Democrat states were like, yeah, we actually take care of people here. We're going to take care of these people you're using for a political stunt. Now you have this. Ron DeSantis has no bottom. He's a disgusting person. And honestly, there's some people that are saying he's might be spinning out. He's just like hitting too much on the gas here. I think Kanye West might be giving Ron DeSantis a run for his money at this rate for Republican bigotry. Ron DeSantis is hot right now, but he might be a nobody 2 years from now when we're a month away from the 2024 presidential election. Mark my words. A lot of spicy predictions here on this episode. Lastly, something I want to talk about here is this phenomenon hitting the nation. You've heard of quiet quitting. You've heard of quiet firing. You've heard of all these things. But now you're about to hear about overemployment. So, one tech CEO fired 2 engineers for, quote, secretly working multiple full-time jobs at once. In this viral LinkedIn post shared by Canopy CEO Davis Bell, which sparked controversy for shedding light on the supposedly growing trend of overemployment, or secretly working 2 jobs at once. Overemployment supposedly has soared during the pandemic. I'll say so-called overemployment, with some saying it allows them to make $600,000 a year during a period of record inflation and soaring housing costs. To me, this isn't some fun new trend, Bell wrote in the post. It's a form of theft and deception and not something in which an ethical, honest person would participate. This post prompted a backlash from several corners of the internet, including the subreddit anti-work, with some users saying that CEOs like Jack Dorsey and Elon Musk were lauded for working at multiple companies at once, while regular workers were punished for it. Others speculated that the engineers may have been working 2 jobs to make ends meet. And listen, I've said this, like I've been on the record for this. If you're doing the jobs that are required for you and that are given to you and you're accomplishing them, you're not like falling behind in any like meaningful way compared to your peers, then whatever. Shouldn't be anyone's business. I'm not a believer in like, if you are given 40 hours to do 10 hours of work and you get that 10 hours of work done, then it's on the company to give them more work. If there's no more work being given or that employee is just good enough, then hey, that's great. That employee should be able to just like do whatever they're able to. And you know, like this is an inflation economy where like people feel like they don't have enough money with their original incomes to make ends meet. It's harder to make ends meet. They're talking about getting second lines of work, getting alternative streams of income. Everyone is. It's hard. A lot of things are going on. Like there's a recession that I would say and have been saying that we're already in, but now others are saying that is definitely coming in 2023. And Bush Spanko in chat is saying, yeah, one of my buddies showed me are overemployed and that employers expect you to work overtime without pay instead. That's also true. They expect you to, employees and employers want time theft. Whereas, yeah, employers want time theft. And employees are talking about like wage theft here. Employers are worried about wage theft. But again, there's only wage theft if there's work that's not being done. So it's on you to fill their 40 hours of time with useful work. In an interview with Insider, Bell said that these comments along these lines mischaracterize his company's situation, adding that one person upset by the post even called his cell phone and said they hope the CEO, quote, dies in a car crash. Whoopsies. And then LG says, as a previous employer, I agree with you that people are working 2 jobs to make ends meet. However, should an employee be working on their side gig when on an employer's time and dime? That's what I'm saying here, is that if an employer is giving you work to do and you've accomplished all of that work and that employer is not giving you more work to do, it's on the employer to fill that time. If it's a situation where it's just like slow and you still expect the employee to be there, but there just like isn't much to be done and they've like done all the administrative work that's out there, then you make the decision to either like convert them to be hourly so you are not paying them for wasted time, so to speak, or just acknowledge that, hey, the job you have given them right now is one where they don't need the full time allotted to do it. And then you sort of adjust either the job you're giving them or the job they have. I think this is a business thing, and when you're working in a small business where you have like 1 or 2 employees or like kind of like team, then it's easier to do that. But like the truth is that when you have hourly employees, when you have like smaller situations like that, I think like these conversations make more sense about what you're looking at. But a lot of situations have salaried employees where they're supposed to be working 40 hours a week and they're paid like they're working 40 hours a week, but they're very often working 60 hours a week or 80 hours a week, and they're not being paid for that additional time. They're not being paid for the additional skills or labor that they're picking up. And that's kind of just been the story for people throughout COVID. Like, people have been being let go of or laid off of jobs, or they're moving on to other jobs. And then the people who stay at those jobs are learning new skills and taking their places because those people aren't being replaced. New people aren't being hired. The company's saving money that way by not hiring new people. And so you're not hiring new people. You're not giving out raises. Not enough conversation is had around time theft on behalf of what workers are doing. On behalf of what employees are doing is what I'm saying. Because there are a lot of employers that bank off the fact that we have salaried employees we got them hired saying, oh yeah, you'll be working 40 hours, sometimes more, sometimes less, when they know very well it's going to be 60 hours, 80 hours a week most of the time, but they're not going to be paid for that time. They're not going to be paid for those skills. So I think you can definitely have it on both sides. You can have wage theft on behalf of employees and time theft on behalf of employers. But like when you look at charts like wage growth versus productivity growth over the past 80 or since the 1980s, you see that, okay, if there is wage theft happening, productivity is not taking a hit, right? We're still very, very, very productive, but maybe we're being as productive with less time, which should be the ideal. We should have, like, that's what they teach in economics, is that in addition to land, labor, and capital, you have technology, which makes production marginally easier over time. And the hidden thing they kind of don't say in that, but they only imply, is that makes labor less crucial to work with, but which means you can do your job with fewer workers, which means you can just lay workers off, which has been happening. That's why you go to a McDonald's and there's fewer people working there, but there's a lot of touchscreen kiosks that are ready to take your order, right? Those jobs are just not coming back. And once they get like robot fry cooks and things like that, they'll replace those jobs too. Just as there are fewer assistants in the world because Google Calendar is easy enough for busy people to work on. So, technology ultimately makes things a little bit more efficient there. But in between that, technology makes time more efficient. And then you have business things where, business is booming or business is slower, but you still need to keep employees on, so you still need to pay them. So all these things I think are valid considerations, LG. And then, yeah, exactly. If you're a good boss, you let them work on other things on their own time so they can, pursue other interests, employment, whatever the situation they're in. Generally speaking, I mean, I think more often than not, like, you see situations that are horribly exploitative with really small businesses, but there are also situations where you have small businesses where the bosses really do care for and look after their employees, and that's what's supposed to happen, so those don't make the news as often. I like to believe that's more the exception. I mean, that's more the rule than the exception. But yeah, that's always going to kind of be there. Here's the disgusting one, though. Here's the one that kind of like sent me on a nerve. So Equifax, friends of the show, lovely, great company. They do nothing but awesome things. They have a tool called the work number. And the work number basically is the country's largest centralized database of income and employment information. Which Gizmodo notes is a statement which is as vague as it is Orwellian. But what Equifax did is they used this work number metric and they turned it on their own employees to figure out, okay, out of our employees, who are taking multiple salaries? Who are taking salaries from multiple different places? Not just Equifax, but somewhere else. And they found about 24, I think 25 actually, people for whom this fell under. And they found some other metrics too they decided to tie to lack of working. And basically said that the firing of 24 remote employees from Equifax's workforce resulted in a months-long investigation where the company looked through the records of at least 1,000 employees from human resources and cybersecurity and professionals and found that they were working another full-time job while being employed by Equifax. So working 2 full-time jobs at once, which remote work ultimately allows. Because if you don't have to go into an office, you can just have 2 computers open and do both of the work if you're able to. Like, I mean, I know a lot of people full disclosure, if I should be doing this, at my day job company, there are people who have businesses of their own. Like, I would consider myself this as well. And so sometimes, like, on my lunch breaks, I have my personal computer open and I'm doing things that relate to Syndicate 23, whether it's usually publishing or marketing things. I haven't done a lot of editing on the go, but yeah, coordinating invoices, emails, all that kind of stuff people do for their own personal gigs, their side hustles or whatever they're working on. Sometimes it's not side hustles, it's volunteering, all right? But for a lot of people, that extra time they have, they need to monetize because it's rough in these streets. So I totally get that, and I totally understand things like that. But the fact that you had the CEO say, we expect our team to be fully dedicated to Equifax and have one rule, their job at Equifax. I'm sure you are as disappointed as I am. But, yeah, they had cheeky names for this, like Project Page 12 or Project Home Alone. And they used VPN usage data and manager feedback and peers throughout the day when a worker was unavailable, which is insidious because, like, the whole benefit to work from home that, by the way, CEOs benefit from is that you have flexibility of your work schedule, which is awesome for parents who no longer have to worry about daycare as much because they can cater to the needs of their kids and then still do their work. What you actually found was that, you'd have parents who would like be exhausted and go to sleep and then open up their laptops and then do some work. And then they would work even more to overcompensate for the fact they weren't working during regular hours. That was a phenomenon that you had that was acknowledged during COVID, although there aren't a lot of studies about these things. It's kind of really hard to pinpoint and get down. But Equifax spokesperson Kate Walker says they followed all applicable laws in the handling of the situation. They're naturally at-will employees, probably, and they're terminated because of multiple factors, and including cases of their own admission that they had a secondary full-time position. Yeah. Like, ultimately, these companies and these people are caught in an economic situation where a lot of these companies can't afford maybe to pay their employees so that they are not seeking other employment. And these employees are like, listen, I can't afford to live off of this one job, which is like, damn, this would also be like a state of American society because human resources and cybersecurity professionals, these are people, HR, you usually have like a 2-year degree and some certification or like a 4-year degree and some certification, right? Cybersecurity, same thing. You usually have a 4-year degree to do these things. In American society, for like my entire life, you were told, hey, go to college, get a degree in something that like you can, get a good job at. Like, I don't think we had any qualms about saying, hey, if you do something that's more artistic, not a lot of companies that pay a lot of money are looking for those kinds of things. So like, do at your own risk. Sure. That doesn't devalue those things, but like human resources and cybersecurity professionals and the kind of people working at this big data company like Equifax, these are college professionals. They're supposed to be able to work 40 hours a week, one job, and be comfortable. Hell, if you work 40 hours a week and you're cleaning toilets, I don't care what level of college education you have. I believe if you have a full-time job, you should not, you don't need to be buying like gold rings and Lexuses and things like that. But you shouldn't worry about having to pay rent. You shouldn't worry about having to buy groceries. You shouldn't worry about having to get gas. You shouldn't worry about having to get a second job to maintain your bare necessities if you're already working a full-time job. If you're in the working class at least. But damn, especially if you've like gone to college and done all these things. Not necessarily because people who've gone to college are like better or like have deserved it, but because that's what this country has told people. That's why people have gotten into tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands of dollars into debt, which once people get some relief from, these same people turn around and go, hey, that's unfair. You shouldn't have done that. You should have worked harder. America's sending these mixed signals, and a lot of times these companies are kind of just caught in between them and just like, hey, we're not America, but still, like, that's when it's kind of time to say, kind of like what LG's saying in chat here, unless Equifax made them signs they couldn't get another job, they shouldn't be making them sign for that. They should allow people to, again, if you accomplish your main job and your goal is what's there, you should have that flexibility to work in other things and do other things. So using their own creepy technology, and the number of times that Equifax has been hacked into, by the way, has been well storied, where people's social security information, their credit scores are just like out there on the internet. All right? It's not because these cybersecurity professionals are working from home or they're working multiple jobs. This is before the pandemic, okay? So the fact that Equifax is using their technology to spy and snoop on their employees outside of work is insane and shows what kind of grimy company it is, and it's an example of a hostile company that people would not want to work at, a company that does not understand the real material economic conditions that people are going through. Nor does that type of company understand the state of society today that regular workers care about and live in and have to deal with, which gets to the other major point in the story, and where I'll kind of conclude here, is that that's kind of the state of America right now. You work real hard. You do all the right things. You go to college. You work at all the greatest, highest companies or whatever. And you can still find yourself struggling and worrying if you'll lose everything. And it's a country that says they believe in a safety net, but once you end up needing that safety net, it shames you and guilts you and brings you down and makes you feel like less of a person for the environment that America creates. Here's where I'll end tonight. On kind of like an insightful note, not the brightest note, but I know I said this would be the fun part, but I just thought this was listed very well and ultimately has a decent ending. But there's a thread from Russ Bengston, who's generally a shoe sports commentator, but this is a phenomenal thread here that really resonated with myself and a lot of people. It goes, to anyone who wonders about the quote-unquote mental health crisis, if you build a society where everyone but the wealthy has to prove again and again that they deserve to exist, a lot of people are going to start wondering if they do. If you can work a full-time job and still not be able to afford rent or buy groceries or go to a doctor, is there any wonder that people have trouble finding motivation to stay alive? If things like breathable air and drinkable water are no longer available to people because of where they live or how much money they make, what exactly is the fucking point? Why bother? Why bother? What, to make some billionaires even richer? When the entire economy is a scam and there's no limit to how rich people can get and no obligation to any common good and no commitment to public health or any base standard of living, what is the fucking point? Again, this is Russ Bennington speaking. I'm a privileged, cishet, Gen X white dude from a middle-class family in the burbs, and I would define my primary mood as despondent. I ask myself why I'm still here, and I don't have a lot of great answers. And that's partly personal, sure. My brain can suck sometimes, but a lot of it is about circumstances that are beyond my and most other people's ability to control. I don't want to monetize every last aspect of my life just to survive. Nor do I want to spend whatever time I have left on this planet further enriching the same giant corporations that have contributed to making life so bad for many. But what the fuck else is there? We've managed to kill off 70% of species just to make a couple dozen people richer than anyone else has ever been. We've made all these advancements in so many areas, and so many people will never benefit from any of them. Humans are fantastic. Humanity fucking sucks. And I think I want to finish out this thread here, but the point I was getting at is that this is bigger than any one job. This is bigger than a quiet quitting fad or trend. This is, we're learning about what actually happens when a lot of this rhetoric about rugged individualism and pulling yourself up by your own bootstraps and if you work hard enough, you'll succeed. Well, you learn the limits of that rhetoric, and you also learn when that rhetoric totally just fails out and spins out. To the point where it's beyond recognition. But these are people's lives here. This is your life. These are my lives. These are people's lives that are actually in the balance here because of these decisions. And again, enriching an increasingly fewer and fewer number of people. And so we'll close out here with what Russ is saying. Quote, I look at what's going on with Alyosha Awerka Moore with his cancer fight. A guy who's responsible for so much of streetwear culture and building up so much for so many brands, and he's got a fucking GoFundMe? Sorry for butchering his name, I probably did. Any one corporation he worked for could easily pay off all of his bills. I'll repeat that. Any one corporation he's worked for could easily pay off all of his bills. It would be a fucking rounding error, not even that. If he doesn't matter to these companies, the rest of us sure as hell don't mean shit. None of us matter. It's just give us all you can for as long as you can, and when you can't anymore, fuck you. And we can all apparently just help each other with an ever-diminishing pool of resources that those same corporations seek to drain even further as the wealthier get wealthier. And we will, because we care. Because we realize people matter because they're fucking people. And that goes to show like people's generosity and people's compassion and what they care about on a regular level. That's why, despite all of this bleak political stuff, that's why I'm interested in this political project. Is because when you get past all of this, when you talk to regular people, when you reach them on that level, you actually have hope. You actually have an opportunity to make something or matter something different. And so he ends. Yeah, we're not perfect either. We still consume a lot that only costs as much as it does because someone else is getting exploited, because someone else can't afford a place to stay or food to eat or the clothes they fucking make. You have to be a sociopath to some degree just to be a human being on this planet, and I don't know how much longer I can do it. The only thing I can do is be my own fucking Robin Williams and Good Will Hunting and try and hug myself and repeat that it's not your fault. But fuck, I just don't know how I can hang together much longer without something major breaking, because this whole fucking society is built on taking, and so many people just have nothing left to give. And yeah, it's hard. I'm someone who has, struggled with a lot of these mental health things before, but I am a very realistic person. I have no problem dealing with bad news, but I can give you a genuinely optimistic point to end on, which is, like I was saying with Caesar earlier, people are very reasonable once you remove them from this internet online space. They're very reasonable once you break down these things, once you find a language and a messaging path that, quite frankly, the people in power are too lazy / not interested in actually finding to communicate that and elucidate that and bring that to the broader public. I believe that's possible to do. I believe that when you do that, you can create a real positive thing for the world, and for people in your community, and in the end of the day, for yourself. That's important too. Politics is a selfish act, but it's also an act for the people in our community, the people we care about, the people less fortunate. Sometimes even the people more fortunate, because we can all benefit from these things if we have a little bit less of an individualistic mindset. you know, yeah, Michael Brooks' last stream before he passed ended something like that. There's just be kind to people, be well to people, and remember that there's more power and strength and solidarity and community than there is in division and fighting and continuing the kinds of systems that create the situations we're in today. I hope I don't jinx myself when I'm able to carry the torch longer, of course. Rest in peace to Michael Brooks, who was the inspiration for a lot of Power Report, one of the first people to encourage me to do a show like this. And yeah, it's definitely a missing voice on the left in doing these things. But I promised I wouldn't end too depressingly. I definitely am learning how much of a pessimist I am. But again, I think it's really nice that this thread existed, Russ Bingston's thread existed, to say that, yeah, there's a lot of stuff that is mental health that's going on, but a lot of stuff is the world, and those things combine together. But again, my happy note where I will end is that at the end of the day, there's more opportunity for progress and to make the world better than we often give credit to and give light to. And if we start working on that opportunity instead of fighting it within ourselves, and we build some positive momentum going, I think things can look a lot better for the world. I really, really do. So, thank you for watching the stream. Thank you for watching Power Report. The most uplifting, depressing show on the internet. Thank you all for powering me and keeping going. Thank you, Fire Goimar Dragon, I believe. Sorry, I probably mispronounced that. Good night, United We Can Win, you say. And saying, I came in late, I'll watch from the beginning tomorrow. Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Fire Weimar Dragon. Guiomar? I'm going to go with Guiomar. But please correct me on the pronunciation at some point soon. Reach out to me on Twitter or something. I want to get that right. Love you too, El Gary. Thank you very much for joining. Left the Box, you rock. I'm so sorry your clip from last week isn't up yet. I am still working through audio face edits, but I'll be finished with this weekend. Thankfully, Power Report is very easy to edit, and I will get to just flood my channel with all of the stuff we've been recording for the past couple of months on Power Report, because the great thing about the stuff we do is that it has longevity. It holds up. I'm planning these things methodically so that you can watch it all in order and get a real life history lesson. And I'm proud of what we're doing. I'm proud of what we're continuing to do. We will continue to do together. And everyone be well. Love your neighbors. Love people who are different than you. And love yourself. And you can start by getting some sleep. Okay. I'm going to pick a channel to raid, actually, as I wrap up this stream. So, yeah, we'll make things fun. Good night, good luck, and let's see, it's either going to be Matt Bender or Sharkio0. And I'm deciding based on whatever stream looks more relevant to what we're doing right now after this ad ends for the new Black Adam, that rock movie. And yeah, I think it's definitely going to be Matt. So yeah, to Matt's stream, y'all go. Enjoy that, everyone. And yeah, please follow if you're not already. We'll talk to you next week. The power is always within you. Matt Indeer. We's raiding. Naders Raiders.